And we've been having some issues with the mics, so if you can, think to just stay a little closer.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I don't know. It's in the back in yellow. Right underneath. Sacramento Public Defender. How many are there? Two? One in pink. And then the yellow one.
Yeah, well, I guess that, but that was, just.
Go ahead and start. I told him 3. going to go ahead and have the budget hearings come to order. Travis has sent me a text that he was obviously running late. So I guess first up, we have Public Defender. Gretchen?
I've been told to get close. Yep, that seems close enough. Good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to address you regarding some additional requests we have from our 2022 budget. The first one is in the series for legal services. Post-COVID, if we can say we're post-COVID, we have been ramping up more for trial preparation, and we are 6 months in to 2022 and already have bills that will deplete supplemental and general. So we are on the committee to come in August on those requests. We won't be addressing that today for additional appropriation for 2022, but anticipation for 2023 mirroring 2022, we had asked for an additional $10,000 in that series for professional services. We have never had to go into supplemental for several years to spend, which comes out of fees, the supplemental. And this year will already, by the June when we pay out, have depleted that one as well. So I wanted to anticipate I put half of what I thought we would need because I always try to be a little conservative, and I would have to come back in 2023 if we stayed at the same pace that we were for 2022. So that's the first addition I wanted to bring to your attention. I don't know if anyone has any questions on that before I move forward.
Any questions? Do you have any?
Okay. The next one is the liability insurance. It always does creep up each year. It's based on the number of cases appointed to our office. We had 210 more cases appointed to our office, so the insurance increased to reflect that, and that's why it just crept up a little bit, but I always like to bring that to your attention, why that's a number that we've increased from 2022 to 2023 in the budget.
That is,
Oh, I'm sorry. That is also in the 300 series. It's under insurance, liability insurance. The amount in there is 16,249. Oh, sorry. Yeah. To be more exact.
that's approximately $1,800 more.
Right.
last year.
Yes. Yeah.
Questions? All right.
Okay. And we're going down to the 400 series of capital outlays. Last year was the first year we didn't have in the budget money to lease a vehicle. In the past, we have leased the vehicles for 3 years with 40% coming back to the county for those payments. And at the end of the 3-year term, we have purchased or given the money for the commissioners to purchase the vehicle out of fees. And those are the 2 vehicles we have. The one, we tried to get by 1 year without using any sort of the money for fees towards leasing a vehicle, but this car that we're using now is becoming very run down and it doesn't have air conditioning. So we had contacted Dorset about to just give us an estimate of what a lease would be again, to start that up again. And they had told us roughly to put in $350, it could be less than that, to outlay for the year. And then with 40% of that coming back, and then our plan was at the end of 3 years to purchase the vehicle again out of fees with the money coming back for the vehicle for the county. And that's the last addition we have to the budget.
Is that line item 440460?
44,460.
Okay, thank you.
That's for one. We have done this with the 2 other vehicles that are out there. We have done this in the past and then purchased some after 3 years.
It's at 271 on the pink. Yeah. Okay. No problem.
How many vehicles do you have now?
We have 2, the county owns through us 2, but then we have another one that we have, that third one that we have, that is the one that we were trying to upgrade because it's become very rundown. We had 4, but that one was even more rundown, and that one was given to community corrections to try to utilize.
What is the one that's ran down?
It's the, I'm terrible at cars. It's, I don't know what, it's the red one out in front of our, it's old. I'm not sure which one. Do they have them listed? I'm not sure which one it is.
I didn't know what.
I can get it, I can find it out for you.
Is that the Toyota Celica that Chris is referring to? Toyota, was that the Toyota that you were talking about last?
No, that's Department of Probation. That's their car. Yeah. Oh, it's Adult Protective Services? Oh, okay.
What they've got.
Correction, is there a reason why you lease versus purchase outright? Is there
Well,
something with your
when I
budget?
contacted Dorset, that it was easier for availability right now to try to lease it than purchase outright, because he would have to find something that would come in January. There's nothing we could get right now. So we anticipated leasing. He wouldn't know what stock he would have in January. And so he said, we will have something, some sort of Nissan that, low end that you could lease. I think that was the way it was put in the past with the commissioners, that we always was lease the vehicle. If we have money in there, we could purchase it if there was one available. But right now, I feel that what I have found out contacting people, that it's much harder to get a used car now than it seems to be to get a new car, but in the new car availability is even tight. But if we could find one, I believe we have money in there, we could purchase it, we could do it either way. But that was the way that had been recommended to me in the past to do it.
I just wanted to make sure there wasn't any issues with your reimbursement.
No, and I think before, there was never designed to purchase the car. I mean, it was always been like, you're going to lease it for 3 years, then we're going to get another one, we're going to lease it for 3 years. But then when they came in and told how much the money, how much it was going to cost, it was like, well, this is 40% back, this is a win for the county, we'll just go ahead and purchase it. So that's what's happened on the last 2 also, is that they came in at a really low price, and then with it getting reimbursed, it was a good deal for the county.
Anything else from committee? As I look at a couple things, do you anticipate anything else going up? I think your budget from last year is roughly $16,000 higher for next year than it is this year. One of the things that sticks out to me, the gasoline. I mean, it's at least twice as high now, this time, than it was last year. You left it at the same.
Well, we were anticipating that we have to travel a lot to the county that are doing temporary housing. We were hoping that, with the transition to the jail, that would cut down that traveling.
Okay.
And so,
You have a plan for it.
yeah, we try to be conservative. If we have to come back, I will. Or we were hoping that would cut that gas price down so you wouldn't have to travel to the other temporary holding, Martin County being quite a distance
Yeah,
to travel to, so.
okay.
What vehicle were you planning
With,
on leasing?
we don't, there's no vehicle that is available yet. It wouldn't start till January if it was approved. And that would be upon their availability, what they had in stock at that time. So they gave me an estimate of what the payments would be. It could be less. I think they estimated it high at $350. They thought it'd come in at $300, but incidental costs, they put it at $350 based on the demand. But I can approach them about the purchase of a vehicle, but it seemed to me that economically, when I called them, that wasn't the way that they anticipated to go at this time.
I'm assuming you're going to look at a fuel-efficient vehicle that you're looking at.
Yes, that was the design of it.
When I look at this, a couple of these increases, I guess, seem to be out of your control. the one that's not is the vehicle. And I guess my question is, we had asked for a 3 to 5 year plan, and I think where that would pertain to you pretty much is the vehicles. Or that's what I would look at. Did you create that, or do you have?
I can't supplement it with that, and it was something that, the air conditioning went out, so that was in the car and trying to get an estimate to fix it. So I can supplement that. That's why I wanted to make sure I came to the hearing to address that this is a concern we have, but I can. That was not something that was, like last year, we didn't ask for it. And this year, it was something that came up right at the time that it was due. We were hoping that maybe we could get it fixed before we came here, and then I could say, hey, we don't need it. But I think that at this time, it's something we still anticipate that we would need. We didn't anticipate last year or the year before, but I think if not knowing now, I wanted to come and address it with you first and tell you I think we're still going to need it, and that I can submit something that we feel that this will be something that will be 3 years outlay.
Okay. Right.
The 3-year plan. is the only one.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Councilman Morris, you have any questions?
No,
Councilman Thacker, any questions, concerns? All right, you have anything further?
Nope, I do not. That would be it.
Obviously, take everything under advisement, see where it goes. I think the big thing that we're still waiting on for all departments, Baker Tilly, see where they're gonna come back on some things and have better information when that happens, so
Oh, okay.
we will let you know. I appreciate it.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Next up, Commissioners Highway. Who's giving the spiel?
Tippy toes here. So we're gonna do edit when Larry comes in here, or do you guys wanna do that now, or edit?
If you can start out with your budget, if you want, in general fund.
Okay.
Pardon me?
General-
Yeah, commissioners in general fund. That doesn't require Larry.
I'm waiting for a comment from Cheryl or Judy.
Yeah,
All right,
bald head.
you ready?
So let's go down to line 33300, contractual services. We've requested $165,000.
Wait a second, maybe I don't have the right one. Nope.
Are you looking for the commissioner's budget?
On the second.
No, we're in
No, we're
commissioner's
just general
budget.
fund.
So it's in the pink section. It's,
333.
well, because he said Larry, and Larry's not here.
Geez, sorry. 33300, it's contractual services. Um,
68, yeah.
are you guys there?
Yes,
Good?
yeah.
Okay. That $165,000, a lot of that, about $125,000 of that is gonna be the new maintenance of our new jail. And also, another $15,000 to $20,000 will be grass cutting at the jail. There's Larry.
333.
They're on their budget.
set up.
Any questions about
I don't
that?
understand the contractual
You said
services.
15 grand was lawn mowing,
Yeah, it could be.
and that's subbed out now.
We just want to budget it just in case. Who knows what the rest of this summer is going to look like? Right now, we're under contract as part of the project. Metzger, I may have gotten that wrong. They owe us 6 grass cuttings. That should put us into August, so hopefully grass season should be just about over. But for next year, I don't know what that will look like, if we will have employees that will cut grass, if we will take a lawnmower down from the highway department and cut grass, or things like that. But just in case, we're not in that situation, 15 to 20 grand for grass cutting contractually. And then 37,850 professional services.
Wait a minute. I'm
Sorry.
still staying on that contractual services. The budget for that, for this 2022 year was 9,500. Total expenditures, 23,366. Why is it more than double than
Looks like they encumbered something.
encumbered what?
Because if you see the 2022 total budget,
Yeah.
that means that that budget was amended 9,500 to 27,300.
So there was an adjusted budget for 17,800.
I would assume it's an encumbrance, because they've not done an additional appropriation.
Okay.
It wasn't additional revenue, it was just what we encumbered.
Well, it says additional adjusted budget. Okay. Do you know what it's for?
On the new jail.
I can't remember, we encumbered several things at the end of the year.
I'm just going, like, because this goes back 3 years. The year prior was 10,700, and it was, you didn't encumber things. So I'm just trying to get everything to add up. Thank you.
Do you have another question on that?
No, that's fine.
Anybody else have any questions on that before we move on?
I guess I got it, you know,
It could be anywhere from stocking pieces that Garmong or BNS or anybody has said that we may need to purchase those pieces and keep them there. It may be for future maintenance. It's anything to do with maintaining a jail a heck of a lot better than what we did with the last jail.
that's what I mean, because we had contractual services, but this,
Yeah.
that was, but that all encompassed the same plan. Said,
No, this is going to be separate because a lot of the maintenance on this new facility that's all computerized and things like that will require specialized folks to work on it. So it may be people that are, folks can't work on it, so we may have to pay somebody to do that,
So where is
like a
that?
Sycamore Engineering or something like that.
Where is that?
It would have either been in building maintenance or possibly the jail, but I feel like it might have been building maintenance. It
Yeah.
wasn't in the commissioner's budget in the past.
No, this is just solely new for the new building.
Okay.
Tommy will still have his normal building maintenance budget.
Okay.
They transferred out of postage.
I'm sorry, they paid RQAW, and I'm assuming that was for
Oh,
the-
yeah, the front entrance.
oh, yeah,
Or no,
13,585, I'd have to look at it, but there's RQAW is in here for this year.
one is the front entrance after having several meetings, and the other one was to pay for the jail study,
Yeah.
feasibility study.
The 9,500 is normally for who we call Dossett Consulting, and he does our, I'm going to sleep like Mike, our cost
Cost
allocation plan
allocation.
every year. Mike, I'm gonna have to get some of that.
The what plan?
It's called the cost allocation
cost
plan,
allocation, okay,
and they do it for the county, and then what he does is goes through all expenses, and then we tend to get a reimbursement that's from the counties, make sure we haven't missed anything, whether it be from Title 4D, public defenders. All of that can be even our time. He allocates so much of the auditor's time that does the claims. It's a big process. And then the county gets so much money back. So, but his fee is 9,500, that's what they used to put in there. But they have done some transfers, and that was to pay for our QAW. And the rest of them are just very small, $50 things or something.
Incidental thing. Okay.
Does that answer that?
Thank
Okay.
Councilman Thacker, any other questions? I guess mine on the maintenance, I'm just a little bit confused. What exactly is it for? It's to stock items for the future?
It could be for just about anything. So, going through there and doing a tour, and you see that everything requires basically a laptop to get into to repair or something like that. Our maintenance guys are not going to be able to do that. So what we have looked at for the future is basically contracting with like a Sycamore Engineering or something like that for when there is an immediate, something breaks, they can come in and repair those things. Stocking pieces, general maintenance and upkeep of air filters, all that stuff. We wanted to have just a separate budget to where the county commissioners could kind of see and control it and actually be physically in control of the building and have hands-on more than just relying on building maintenance to just do it. So that's what that is really for,
So that's parts and labor?
everything.
You know, I don't know whether you guys remember or not, but I think the sheriff asked for 2 more people to be on the payroll for building maintenance. At this point, that's not been necessary. And, but to compensate for that in case we do have to, we anticipate things. Of course, there's some warranty right now, but we'd like to be able to be in position to get a contractor in, fix things, and then not have those people on our payroll. I mean, one commissioner, I anticipate 2 people sitting down there from 8 to 4 o'clock, 5 days a week, except the breaks at Sunday at 3 o'clock in the morning.
So this is gonna be, some of these types of things could be overlapped in the sheriff's budget?
No, no.
Okay.
Not at this point.
Where did,
Ask your question.
Can I just do it from here instead of getting up the podium?
Yeah, hold on just a second.
I'm sorry, I thought you said Brendan. Okay.
where, where, so the 125,000 came from where? How'd you come up with that number?
I think we're just shooting high, just in case. I mean, we may only use 25,000, Brenda. I don't know. I mean, it just depends. If an air handler goes down, Sycamore Engineering has to be there for 3 days and order a part at maybe $50,000 when it's out of warranty. So we're just preparing for one of those big things instead of having to come back for an additional appropriation from building maintenance or something like that. We just have our own fund.
What is the warranty on the property as far as from the building?
Most of the
side?
stuff's just 1 year.
1 year?
Yeah.
It doesn't have like a 10-year for like a new home, has a 10-year warranty for structural and,
No, we do have a group come in that's commissioning the jail that will go through all the products, everything inside the jail, and basically give us a large document of how everything works and operates, and we'll give those to the Sycamore Engineerings, the fry tags, and stuff like that. To, when there is an emergency, they're ready to go immediately. But like I said, the technology, it's not just an old boiler anymore. It's 2 computerized devices with 50,000 wires and going all over the jail.
and there's no warranty on the computerized
Yeah, but it's not much, only a year.
90 days?
A year from when?
A year from the commissioning, I think is the way I understand it, yeah.
After commissioning is done.
Mike?
Say it was recommended, we have, what's the fellow that comes in from the state? Yeah, Department of Corrections sends a representative to all our monthly meetings. He recommended we get this, commissioning, I wanted to say christening, commissioning done, and, then they go through and of course, the architect recommended it and Garmong recommended it. And then when they certify those it's kind of a double check on Garmong too. And once they get that done, then we'll take over and the warranty will start. Yep.
Mr. Kearns, did you have something? You good? Okay. All right.
So none of these, there's no contracts in place already,
No,
or that you guys plan to sign?
we probably won't sign any contracts till the commissioning's done.
Okay. I didn't know if there was a maintenance contract that you planned on signing for any of that stuff ahead of time.
I think the calculation was pretty simple. We thought about two people, and, we could hire two people for $125,000, or if we could contract somebody for $125,000. I think that's where the calculation came from.
And contracts too, Travis, would have to be signed in a commissioners meeting and stuff, so we're not to that point yet.
Okay.
All right, what'd you say the next one was? 37850?
Yeah. Professional services, I'm not sure what the amount was last year. 60,000. $75,000. I know $6,500 was for RJL Solutions. 65,000. Yeah, that's to pay them. What was the extra $10,000 for? That's right. $67, yeah. Knock it down.
Any questions about that?
I think the additional $10,000, David, was in case we do something like that again in the future, $10,000 study here or there or something like that. Was the additional?
Well, 65 for RJL and ask for 75.
Ask for 75.
That's what we spent on it this year.
No, they're just asking for their, what,
Budget
in
this
their,
year is 60.
That's what they're projecting. So
Yeah, they're asking for 75.
about 11.5% increase, 75, about 25.
That's why I take your 65,000.
6,500, 65,000. That's under
1,000.
RJL 65,000. But is that under professional services?
RJL is actually 60,000 a year.
How much?
60.
60.
I see it says 65, but
5,000
it's,
a month.
it's 5,000 a month.
5,000 a month.
5,000 a month for 60,000.
It's 4,000 and 1,000, 5,000 a month.
Okay, so-
And that was some lobbying and quite a bit of work that they did on the Ready grants. When are they gonna announce that too? Is that this week
23rd.
or 23rd? So they're gonna announce that finally after several months of work.
They've been serving as our grant writer.
And I think we've mentioned that to you guys as well, and then all the other departments, if they wanted a grant written to go to RGL, or RJL and use them as well.
The extra 15,000 was for anticipated potential contracts, so that we don't have to come to the council and ask for an additional appropriation when those things come up.
Such as,
Anything.
Well, like we just did the jail study, and I think that was $10,000, if I recall right.
Yeah, and instead of coming to the council, we just moved money around to pay for that. But
Just allows us to act quicker.
I think the one quote was 20,000 and about, and the other one was 10, so there's the variance right there.
Chris, can you explain the increases in your utilities?
Yeah. I think it's gonna be astronomical at the new jail. Basically, that's most of it. Gas, water, and fuel, and then electricity. Our first electricity bill down there was what, Mike? I can't remember.
So when you increase the budget from 21 due to the jail, you're just to 22, and now you're saying it's even a lot higher than that?
It's 2 jails.
Unfortunately.
Well, one jail's gonna be almost empty.
No, yeah, I agree.
I mean, they won't be flushing as much.
It'll be reduced, but there'll still be a cost there. And then EMA, there could be a hiccup with the EMA relationship with the airport too, that we have to prepare for that. I'm not sure that we can, well, we can't officially disclose anything, but right now, the airport is kind of helping us out with the EMA operation being at the airport. That may change.
So,
Fair
but
enough, Mike.
like if you look at electricity, that's like from 2021, that's a $290,000 increase just for electricity.
They told us to expect a 3% increase in electricity. So that's what we figured.
To go to the new jail.
No, or you just mean, oh,
We're just being overly, I mean, I hope it's not $840,000. That's not just for this bill, or the jail, that's for all of
that's
our
for all
buildings.
of them. Like the old jail was included in the 550,
We still have the old jail, by the way.
but I'm saying it was included in the 550.
Yeah.
We had it back then.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, I mean, that
What's-
would, ultimately, that would be almost a $300,000 increase for that new building, other than annual cost increases.
What'd you say that,
What
what'd you
number do
say
you have?
Duke said?
65.
3%?
50,
I thought,
Okay, that's.
Cheryl, or Cheryl, Brenda, I was thinking about you, because I asked you this question the other day, but, it's not just for the new jail, it's for all, however many county buildings we have.
Yeah.
The electricity increase.
yeah, I think you saw in the newspaper, they were talking about 22% increase in electric rates, and when I talked with Mr. Berger in reference to that, he thought it probably wind up with 16%. So, actual. So there it is. I think the sooner that we can decide to do something one way or another with the old jail, certainly could reduce it some way.
Earlier in the year, their electric bills, some of them were running, I mean, they have small ones, but the big ones were running around 10,000, 9 and 10, 11,000. Their last ones came in at 14, almost 15,000, and almost 14,000. In the last, I don't, that's kind of combined, I don't know if that's just the jail one, because the invoice, it doesn't really tell me, but I'm just saying they're bigger ones that are combined, where the ones that were running 10 and 11,000 at the beginning of the year, this last month, they got hit with, which my guess is what they paid in May is really April's, so.
But what they paid in January was December, so we
Right,
still
but
got.
when it was cold, so now they're hitting, I mean, that's up to you. The last, we just paid one, June 16th, 19,000.
So when did you create these documents? These pages
This should,
are,
as of June 17th, your expenditure amount is correct.
okay, so.
What
this
you're
was-
looking at is as
This
of
is
Friday.
basically 5.5 months.
Yes, that is as of June 17th, Calissa,
All right, thanks.
which includes that last one I just talked about, but
Okay.
just an FYI, just wanted you to see the comparison of the bigger
That-
ones
yeah.
compared to what they're paying now.
But that kind of gives us a better idea on that expended, what it covers.
Did you give a total of what they paid this year? Did you get that amount?
Yeah, it's on your, so far, since June 17th, they have paid $270,341.
So I think we're gonna be in the ballpark.
Or 207?
341.
341. Yeah, it should be under 22 expended.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Yeah, got it.
That was as of
Sorry.
June 17th, so I'm assuming that's like January through May or April bills. I could pull this up.
Probably December through.
Yeah.
It's still potentially 6 months.
And that doesn't have the full jail.
No,
Mhm.
but they had some pretty hefty bills while they're constructing.
Just for your info.
Then do you guys want to talk about the telephone real quick? 30100?
Hold on just a second.
Okay.
Commissioner Kearns?
Well, that's what I was gonna mention, that if you're looking at all those utilities within the phone thing, it's an increase of $36,000 new expense that we didn't have last year because of the fiber lines that we installed for the new jail. At $3,000 a month for 10 years.
Yeah, and we negotiated that, and I think we halved it over the other fiber optic option,
Yep. More than half, I think,
more than half, I believe.
because there's a huge install fee too. But they joint gate the install fee
An additional 3,000 per month,
per
Yeah.
month, so
Yeah.
36,000 a year.
or 36,000 a year, but you increased it from 50.
So that pops us up. There's a chance, Brenda, that the phone bill could go down next year, but this is another one of those buffer zones that with the new facility, we're waiting to see how this next 12 months or after the jail's occupied works out. When we did this exercise, what we did was try to predict worst-case scenarios so we wouldn't have to keep coming back. Just like what we did last year with fuel, and now we didn't realize that it was gonna double. We thought a 30% increase and it ended up being, a lot more. So we're trying to be smarter about that. But the utility costs, we paid attention, and that came up with a conservative, liberal estimate, if that makes any sense at all. Because with the new jail, we just don't know.
And we're getting $19,000 bills right now, and inmates aren't even in there yet. It's just the sheriff's office.
The 19,000 is just the new jail, not.
It would be
the
all
old
of
jail.
our buildings.
We can, I'm sure that we're gonna, we have separate meters on that, and we'll be able to identify the exact cost on that jail but it's not developed out currently.
Weren't they putting solar panels on part of that jail?
Yes, and it's
Are they
it's
working?
powering the Sally Port.
That's it?
Well, that's all we could do, yeah. But actually Tyler sent me a message today. I'll look at it. I can let you know what the savings is. He told me how many trees it saved. But I don't think that's part of the budget process.
If you guys have taken a tour of it, that's a pretty good sized Sally Port.
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, there you go, Brenda. That is just that one building. I'm sorry. I thought Lisa said it was all of them.
And do you know what it was for the old jail?
I think Cheryl can look it up, but I think it was 9 to 10 grand on the high end.
David, it produced 6.1 milliwatts per hour. I don't know what that equates to money-wise, but it saved 108 trees so far this year. 6.1 milliwatts. Megawatts. Milliwatts is computers, megawatts.
That's that new kind of electricity, Todd. Milliwatts.
Oh, yeah, you're the electrician guy.
We've had quite a bit of discussion about that jail and the cost of it and what have you, and Commissioner Kearns always believed that it was going to surprise us to the plus side, that it was going to be more than what we were anticipating. And I think he's been right.
Well, actually, we didn't anticipate anything because we could never get an estimate of cost.
And we did have that problem too. But I tried to equate it to the cost of the current jail as to what the new one might be. Might be a wash, but I don't think it's going to be. It's quite an industrial complex down there, that new jail. Yeah.
Do you guys want to talk about anything else down through there? Humane Society, stuff like that?
I assume that line item 33,400 install Christmas lights, is that for the courthouse?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, don't take that away, Travis. That'll be a national tragedy.
I'm not climbing up there.
I've got a couple things to share on that page if you want, or when there's time, on what we did.
On page 2, Brenda?
Yeah, yes. So we increased the Humane Society to 80. You'll see Spay and Neuter League 0. We simply took what was previously in Spay and Neuter and pushed it to the Humane Society.
That was already done in 2022.
But there was an opportunity to give it back to them, so we're keeping it.
And again, that was anticipated in their increase of cost of opening the doors there.
Spay and Neuter League didn't, they don't exist. They do, but they don't. Then the ARC,
So you increased this Humane Society by 25,000?
is that what we did, Mike? That was yours?
55 to 80.
25, 80.
No, it's from,
No, we always gave
55,000
50
to
before.
280. 55,000.
so it's $25,000 increase.
Yep.
And the 55 included the spay and neuter. Yeah, the total budget, and they're asking for 80 this year.
That's an additional 25,000.
Yeah, it's been increased.
After they took it away from Spade.
By
It was
25,000.
already included in the 55s.
Yeah.
It costs 25,000 for, it's gonna cost 25,000 more for them to operate next year.
Well, that's what I am anticipating. I mean, they would like to have 120,000, but, you know, I mean, it's, Brenda, I've always looked at Humane Shelter as if you can make a connection with a community health thing. As a matter of fact, I'm not even sure it shouldn't be paid for out of the health department. I mean, it's all the animals. You know, it's pest control. You know, I've got something on the desk there now about flies from manure at a place. You know, and yeah, I think they've proved had a good track record, and certainly we're not having 2 or 3 county employees having to be responsible for that at all. So I think it's a good community investment. That's me personally. But I don't know, that's me as a commissioner. I think it's a good buy for the county.
I just wanna, I mean, I agree with all that you've said, but I just don't, how are we justifying a jump of $25,000 if they've operated at 55,000 doing their job? Why are we, I'm not saying it's not
Yeah.
necessary, I just wanna know
Well,
why.
again, I mean, my dog, huh? I've not heard of any, they're not taking any animals. I mean, Tim's our
Mr.
main
Thompson,
man.
can you answer that?
Well, I know in the past they have not. I don't know what the current situation is, but.
Yeah. Yeah, we had it on a per animal basis before. Oh, that's something you guys are gonna have to look at too. We're gonna have probably a new animal control officer at some point in time here pretty quick. Probably within a year or so. I think Tim's gonna be retiring.
Which leads me to a question that we asked the public defender, do you have a 3 to 5 year plan that we requested?
I mean,
Sheriff's Department.
What we
That's
have
Sheriff's
done,
Department. Yeah.
I mean, just you guys, general commissioners.
what we have done is, you know, have you guys met with Baker Tilly yet
Nope.
about
Later
the
this afternoon.
comprehensive financial plan?
Later this afternoon.
Okay, that's part of that 3 to 5 year plan. Larry's writing an RFQ right now for a 3 to 5 year plan on capital improvement of roads, bridges, and drainage and stuff like that. That's part of that plan.
Cool.
But as a county commissioner, and I didn't realize this until I became a county commissioner, and Brendan and Mike know now, there are just so many unknowns with buildings. Humane Society, for example, a tree fell on their building, they need some extra cash. You know, there's just so many unknowns for what we're going to do, especially budgeting for the electricity and gas, water, and fuel and stuff like that. I don't know, we didn't know gas was gonna be 50% higher in a year than what it is now. You know, we could promise you all kinds of plans, Brendan, or Brenda, it's just, I don't know. I think we're showing good faith with the capital or the finance
But we're
plan.
not asking anybody to, that, we're not gonna say, hey, you said you're gonna do this, and,
Right.
you know, just a generalized plan would be great. I'd rather be proactive than, like you said, having to come back every month and ask for stuff. If we knew, for example, vehicles, if you know that you've got a 10-year-old vehicle that has X number of miles, you know you're gonna be replacing it, not next year, but the next year. Just put that in a plan, you know, that, so that we can
Yeah.
plan accordingly.
And then, you know, for
All we're
example, for the last 18 months or so, what me, Mike, and Brendan have done, or Mike, Brendan, and I, you know, the study for the old jail, we went ahead and done that. These financial studies, you guys are doing the Baker Tilly thing, the capital improvement plan for the roads, drainage, and structures. I think we're doing what we can to prepare for the future. It's just difficult to try to throw it out there to show everybody.
You don't have a crystal ball.
Yeah. And then with the entrance, you know, I'm sure you guys are all aware that there's a huge security concern with the building. So I think, you know, one of the asks we may come to you guys for is some money to do the entrance up here to where we can get a dedicated sheriff's deputy up here, metal detector and stuff like that, and only have a one-point access into the building. It's what the employees want, and it's what we want. So we'll talk about that later.
This building?
Mhm.
Yeah, okay. Sure.
Yeah, and Brenda, that started with about, what, under $150,000?
Now it's Wayne.
And what I wanted, primarily what I wanted was the doors improved here, so entry. And it's expanded past that a little bit, and that's up to you guys if, but it's a good plan, and it'll work for the future. Our county engineer had to reel me in. I got a little out over my skis, and he had to bring me back. Said, you need bids, you need to do
Wake up,
this.
Mike.
You need engineering, you need, well, these minor things like $10 or $20 or $30,000 for engineering, you know, and the part of the building was sinking, and drainage and connecting with the sewer, and it got a little more elaborate, didn't it? Yep.
Brenda, would you like for me to answer your electricity question for the old jail real quick?
Sure, please, thank you.
While I finally found one I could pull up.
Awesome, thank you.
April 12th through May 10th of this year, for the old jail, it was $13,372.13. And by the looks of them, they've all been running 12 to close to 14.
13,372.13.
And that was for April 12th to May 10th. Oh, I have to go to that one and pull it up.
Yeah, I think we can reduce that water sewer pretty quickly once we get the inmates out of there. And I think they're looking sometime next month to make that move. I don't know. What do you guys see other than the priority is not to have a bunch of water lines breaking come wintertime?
I'd like to just see that building go away. but,
Yeah.
you know, you
So,
got dispatch
you got
and
any good
stuff.
ideas where to put the dispatch?
The old FBI building.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think,
Well,
I thought that was the plan.
We're working
I'm-
on it.
I
we're
think the old
working on
FBI
it,
building
but
Oh,
would be a
really?
nice
Is it even
place to put it.
Is it even an option?
Yeah.
it's
um,
definitely an option.
I think I don't know about Brennan, I don't want to speak for him, but we were kind of impression that that was owned by the federal government. It's actually owned by Thompson Thrift, but it's basically a lease through them with the federal government.
That's what they tried to tell us, but it wasn't.
Yeah.
So we may just be dealing with a realtor. So I
But
think.
that building is set up basically for everything that dispatch has now, so,
With security also.
with security also.
Yeah.
And it needs to be secure. So I think I think it's listed for what, $695 or something like that?
Say 640.
So our county general budget, besides utilities and, you know, some type of new maintenance plan for the jail, and then the Humane Society, everything else is pretty much the same. Everything else is pretty much the same. No big increases. Yeah. In, in county general or edit? We're at,
I see group insurance listed.
oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I don't mean that in a, oh, yeah, that, I just mean,
Todd,
As
real
far as
quick,
the
to their
gas-
defense, they really don't know what's in group insurance on any of them at this point, because they don't put the group insurance in, or the salaries.
If I see the salaries went up,
Yeah.
it didn't go up.
Group insurance is a discussion that, listen, we'll have to have with you.
Okay, so that's
Okay.
not one of them.
I mean, I'm just letting you know, you can talk to them about it, they signed the contract with them, but just so that you know, I don't know that they realize what the auditor's office has to take what everybody has and break it down from the insurance company, what it is per plan, and put some in there. Yes, and I've got a sheet, the employer's portion did increase this year. So that's why you will see that there is an increase in the group insurance in all the departments.
and Todd, we don't even have those numbers yet. We don't even have those numbers yet.
Oh, you guys, okay. I say we just see it in here. And I guess, if it's okay to ask that, I just, some of the ones that we don't see expenditures on, but, plus at the same time,
Like official meetings or burial soldiers and stuff like that. Well, actually, if travel expenses, if you want to raise those, we'll take it, but no. Yeah. And we spent 2? Yeah.
I'm just saying, make a statement, nothing else increased, and then. I didn't make that statement. I know, that's why I said, that's why I said that, you know, I'm just trying to understand it, and I think, to our point is that if it's, we understand if you guys are asking for it and you, like contractual services, and you see the increase on it, but I think if we have every line, when the overall was, last year's budget was adopted budget 4.171, and this year we're asking for 4.771, you know, we gotta look at where's that $670,000 increase, and is it something that we have to have, or can we meet that with appropriations? And we seem to have appropriations monthly, so I mean, it's not like we don't meet to have it. And I think, and ultimately, it's up to the Budget Committee's recommendation, but I'm just trying to understand it too, is if we have, and I know you were getting ready to talk about that, one of them is the ARC. I'm not sure what that is.
I can address that one.
Okay.
That's, it's a facility right along the river. I forget, ARC used to stand for, Association for Retarded Citizens, right?
Yes.
Originally.
American, yeah.
And then, but they provide jobs, for people with disabilities
Oh, okay.
in the community. What's kind of unique is this $87,000 figure
Mm-hmm.
was established, Mike, 25 years ago?
Yeah,
30
probably.
years ago?
It's been $87,000 since at least 2000.
From day one.
I was gonna say about 20 years.
And so,
At least. Plus, at least.
yeah, what they told us was that employed at a cost share program 5 to 10 people year round. Well, now that money won't do that. So they actually came to us, and I think their wish list was about $700,000. So to do what they did in the beginning, if they're to do that now, it'd be almost $700,000. And you're familiar with the community mental health centers, which the state says we have to give a certain amount of money to our CMHC. The language for the ARC program is very similar, but it says you can give, basically implies that if you want to give, this is how much you can do up to. But we've stayed at the same from day one at 87. So we would like to give them more money because they provide a tremendous value to the community. But I think in our discussions and trying to be conservative in this approach, we opted not to say, hey, we'd like to have an additional $600,000 on top of this. If it's something that you think you'd like to learn more about, David Ofsansky, the director, and Will Frankel, the attorney for the group, would gladly come in and make a presentation about their operation.
Yeah, I think that'd be a good idea.
I would think it'd be worthwhile, for
I
sure.
think so.
We've got 36,250 so far this year spent, and it looks like last year you spent the 87,000.
Yeah, it's just a monthly rate.
Yeah, that's,
But it's an organization doing incredible things, but, you know, they never came back to ask for more money. And when they saw what was going on with our CMHC, they actually kind of approached us, seeing if they can get some of the CMHC dollars because of the services that they provide.
Right.
And that's where it started. It's a separate category. No, and the CMH thing is a struggle for all three of us. That's definitely that's a Fowler Park in the cabin discussion, because it's been very emotional. We're struggling with it because we're forced to provide those funds, and I think all of us in this room know that those services aren't necessarily being provided to what our expectations are.
That's something that you could take over. And yet that was just like right up your alley. Is that something that you could just?
We made a proposal to take on an employee of Hamilton Center to work in the, well, I shouldn't say we, I don't know if that's fair. Yeah, I'd say it's fair. All three are in support to bring somebody here as a Hamilton Center employee to do outreach, and that did not work out. Not on our end.
Who sets that amount?
The state was established in 1969, if I recall correctly.
I forget how many counties that are in our Hamilton Center region.
12, 13?
Over 13, yeah.
So
They
that
each-
dollar amount that you requested, is that, you already know that? I mean, that
Yeah,
figure's
Cheryl
solid.
Are you
has-
talking about
Cheryl
the
usually
Hamilton
does it.
Center one?
Yes.
No.
But Cheryl
I
has
increased it by 3.4, 3.5. We've not received that information and probably won't until
No, because it goes by, well, it's different
July 1.
calculation now.
And it increased by
Is that-
3.4 last year, so I just used another
that's how you-
3.4 and it kind of increased it, rounded it up.
mine doesn't have a number, so you put one in there?
No, there's no number.
Well, I
in there.
had to.
It's about 600,000.
Well, it's,
No,
no, it's
it's
730.
730.
Oh, my goodness, it's that
Because
much
it
more
was
now.
687,930 last year.
Okay.
Yeah, 687 last year.
That's aggravating.
Now, what we pay for mental health, for Hamilton Park, I think that was it. There's an adjustment that's made later to the maximum levy. So, it's like, we get a credit back for that. So, they increase our levy by that amount so that you still collect that money minus tax, cap credits. And it's replenished, so it's, you don't have to reduce your levy in order to have that. And as far as Hamilton Center, we pay the bare minimum. Right. Even though it sounds like a lot.
Okay. When do you normally get that? Do you know? Is it July?
It used to be equivalent to the growth quotient, but they've changed the calculation, a year or two ago, so.
Todd, you have a question?
Yeah, course, if it's,
Yeah.
okay. Maybe this is just back to budget 101 again, but you have gasoline in the 200s at 24,400, and then gasoline is listed also in the 33,800. And I understand the increase of.
Gasoline is for automobiles or vehicles. The gas, water, oil is for utilities.
Okay, it's different, yes, okay. I just didn't understand it, so I didn't know if it was gasoline or gasoline.
Come on, Todd, that's budget 101.
Yeah, that's why, it's
should know
kind of a
that.
refresher. It's our first day back.
I had to tell Chris about 12 times, don't worry about it.
Are we doing, we're not doing, employee payroll right now, are we?
No, you really have nothing to do on that because we don't know.
Till we decide.
I mean,
if we want to-
they've not asked for anything in addition. Yeah.
Only question, you answered the question I was gonna ask, so that's perfect. Okay, thanks.
Now, the insurance, though, is at the actual, what you think that will really be based on. Right.
Just take a snapshot in time of who is,
A person leaves,
what?
they replace it, changes
We
in
don't spend the money
coverage,
for
it
service
changes.
agreements, we don't spend the money for advertising.
You can already yell.
We get funded.
All right. Commissioner Schweitzer, you have anything further?
No, I can't remember last year, Calissa or Cheryl, maybe one of you guys can help. I think we always asked for like $5,000 for official meetings and travel and stuff like that, just in case there's something new that we could do, but we traditionally never get it, which is fine.
Well, as I remember when
You
we were
asked for
having the
2,000
discussion that we were coming out of a time and space that nobody was going anywhere for any, and we anticipated there might be more travel.
5,000 travels.
The request for travel has been, well, except for, oh, no, it's even in 2021 was 2,000 for both, for travel and official meetings. So this year.
And I can't remember what we had planned on.
Commissioner Schweitzer, could this have anything to do with you being,
Oh, yes. That's it, the
ASC
traveling.
didn't pay for that?
I can't remember. I don't know.
some of it
I
they
honestly
will,
can't
and
tell
some of the
you.
regional meetings, I'm not sure that
Yeah.
they do, so I don't know.
I know my district meeting that both Brendan and I went to, they didn't pay us for it.
Vice President.
Oh, here we go.
Commissioners. Oh, well, or.
It'd be more than just that.
He's a vice president of the district
District officer, yeah.
of the commissioners.
Wasn't Judy Anderson president of the association for a year when she was commissioner?
But
She was president of the association.
Yeah, the Association of Indiana Counties, yeah.
I don't think their budget increased, not unless they transferred. If there has to be a change of venue in a court case,
What expenses are involved with that?
if you have to move it to another county or something like that, we have to reimburse that county.
Okay, reimbursement, only.
Yeah, you like that?
That's been, well, that's.
I asked the
that's-
same question.
Yes, that's.
Once upon a time, it was put in there, and that's the way it was covered. I don't know if it's by statute, maybe because it's considered a county expense and not necessarily a court expense.
I didn't know the commissioners had to pay the reimbursement, that's why.
Yeah.
When they had the courts at the Y and the Kerman Grotto, did that come out of that fund? Do we know?
No,
No?
that wasn't a change of venue necessarily.
Yeah, it was technically.
It wasn't to another county, it was still our facility.
Okay, but it's from one facility to one that we rented. A different venue.
Like
I-
a judge.
I think that if I remember, and I could be incorrect, I can remember we used it twice, and you may hear this when prosecutor or the public defender come in here, sometimes they've they have a case on the books and they know it's gonna be change and they'll budget for it, but otherwise, there's nothing on the radar currently. Yeah, but yeah, it's an interesting line item, isn't it?
You have about a half hour left in your time slot.
Yeah, that's what I was
So
gonna say.
you
We
was
may have
going
to
about
schedule
Monday.
another meeting for this one if there's any more
Or Larry,
questions.
you may have to come back another day.
You wanna move to,
Edit?
No, I've been there for yours too.
you wanna move to edit?
Sure.
Real quick, the one statement I would like to make, looking at that 3 to 5 year plan that Brenda and David both brought up, I think is a great example, and Larry, no offense, I'm gonna use you as this. Larry did a great job of bringing to us his 3 to 5 year plan with the PowerPoint presentation and everything of vehicles, excavators, things like that, trailers and everything like that. And it's not directed at the commissioners, it's directed at all the departments, especially ones with vehicles and stuff like that. I think it's important that they look at that, especially in the economic times that I think that are gonna be ahead of us, that we look at fuel cost, and vehicle and expenses that they think are gonna be out there.
Mm-hmm. I agree.
Edit. Where is it?
Oh, here's no pink,
It's in yellow.
just yellow.
It's in yellow.
1112.
All right.
So, 31801. And then write this down to 31900 and 3900 all go to Thrive West Central. I'm going to read this to you real quick. For calendar year 2023, the agency is requesting $98,089 of grant match support from Vigo County. This is a total increase of $16,335. This increase is the reinstatement of the Older Americans Act grant matching funds, which was suspended during the pandemic due to CARES Act funding, and a slight increase of programmatic costs for the Rural Transportation Program. This funding request is in alignment with calendar year 2021 request. So, 39,703 is reflected in 31,900. The amount is 39,703. The line item is 31,900. 15,046. The amount of money is in 31,801 line. And then $43,340 is reflected in line item 3,900.
Did you include a copy of that letter in your budget submission?
I'm not sure, Calissa, but you can have this
provide?
one.
Okay, thank you. I'll make the copies, Cheryl. Bring it all. I'll provide you guys with copies next week. I guess that's tomorrow.
So when you get that letter, you can read all those things. Can you do that, or you want me to go through them? Okay. Then, line item 33,300, contractual services for $150,000. That is the capital improvement plan Larry is doing the RFQ for right now. The roads,
That's contractual services.
yeah. Roads, drainage, bridges, buildings, etc.
Now, that's going to encompass more than highway, because in the when it was originally discussed, it was like parks, any
Yeah.
other departments it may have.
Yeah,
Yes. But I mean, twice now, it's just been mentioned as highways, bridges.
sorry.
I mean, I just wanna make sure
Yeah.
we're all on the same page. Yeah, at least your bigger departments that have. I mean, like, buildings, if major equipment purchases, things like that.
Factor in that.
Okay.
Yes.
Then line item 33,305, I apologize, I don't have what was there last year, so I don't know if that's the same.
You're correct.
And Cheryl, you do that for line item 33,310 too, correct? Okay.
Engineering budget, 75.
Okay, 33,340 THEDC, I believe 125,000 is the same as what it was last year. Is that correct? Yes, okay. 33,341 Community Development Fund. Last year we asked for $200,000, we got 100 grand again. Guys, I cannot tell you how important this fund is if we could just get the additional $100,000. We have people like Club Soda that has came to us. They called the other day, had an $8,600 gas bill they couldn't pay. We're too afraid to give them money because the organizations that we traditionally give to at the end of the year kind of have that set for them. So, I mean, Brendan, do you want to say anything on the extra 100 grand if we can get it?
This year, a large allocation went to help people in need food-wise. There's organizations in the community that provide food services, and so we did a push there. It's proven to be a good fund to help those in need when those unpredicted needs come up. A good time of the year to distribute a lot of it is at the end of the year when you realize you have a surplus, but that also seems to be the biggest time when these organizations need the help because they've run out of money. So we did increase it, recognizing the value and how we could have distributed more if the funds were there. So it is a true community fund that helps out organizations that are helping out our own friends, neighbors, and family members.
But if we were to have like a $30,000 or $40,000 request, I mean, that's something we would like to come to you guys in partnership with you and say, hey, this group needs $30,000. What do you guys think? You guys gave us an extra $100,000 additionally. Do you think this would be good? Something like that. I'm going to skip 3,900 because we already went over that. I'm going to skip 33,402. That's a Larry deal. 32,702 Metro Transportation Planning, THEDC. I have a letter. I don't know if you guys have gotten it. That's traditionally what we always give to EDC. Did it just come? Okay.
Are you on 32,702?
I'm on 32,702, yeah.
And
Yep. It's for the Metropolitan Planning Organization. Yep. And then my time is done here. Larry can take over.
Any, hold on just a second, any questions?
Yeah, we didn't do anything additional than what we usually do.
Yeah, if I recall that you guys asked for the $200,000 last year, and we approved the 100,000, but we said we'd like to have better communications, what you guys spent the 100,000 on, but we never did hear back from you guys what you spent the first 100,000 on, not for the additional 100,000 that we didn't give. Is that, am I the only one that remembers
you
that,
said
Brenda?
that. Yeah, I
No, I
agree.
remember that.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's what we said, is that, you know, if we'll revisit it next year, the additional 100,000, but we'd like to have the input on what you guys spent the 100,000 on the prior year. So I would just ask the same thing again, is,
I agree.
I have that in my notes as well.
Thank you. All right,
Are the doors not unlocked?
all right. You ready?
Afternoon. How are you?
Good, thank you.
So, keeping on with edit,
He's gonna do his part that's in edit.
my part in edit, if that's where you want to start.
Yeah, go ahead and start there.
Okay. So the 75, I think he addressed the 33,310. Usually, I think, Cheryl, we talked about advertising that high, but usually it's around $75,000 is what I usually need for that. That's half my engineering budget. That's what historically it's been. I don't anticipate any changes in that. I'm looking at revenues coming in for that. The 33,402, planning and engineering, I would like to ask for an increase to that to about 200,000. I've got some things I'd like to do with some signals around the community. I think we have 8 traffic signals right now. We're looking to get a 9th once we do Clinton Road. I would like to upgrade those. A lot of the county's signals are on the outskirts of the urbanized area, which is seeing a lot of growth right now and a lot of traffic. I think now's the time to upgrade those signals and maybe get those into one unified system that we can better monitor and better be able to expand as the community expands. So that's something I'd like to look at for next year, possibly if we can get approval for that. So that's just the reason for the increase on that one. Any questions on that?
75,000 for an additional signal and maintenance on the current one.
Yeah, it wouldn't be an additional signal, but the additional signal will come with the project, it'll be Clinton Road. We're looking at the signal at Hasselberger. So that would be, I'm looking at that money possibly being able to do a planning study to upgrade all of the signals. So as we get, as we add those, and if there is a need to add those in the future, and then upgrade the ones we have. I just had one, I had a signal controller and some hardware replaced on one. It was about $30,000 last year. It was Park and Fruit Ridge. So I'm anticipating some of those starting to need replacement because a lot of those are 40, 50-plus-year-old cabinets with the hardware in there. So a lot of that technology doesn't jive with what we were doing today, and there's so much more that we can do with our signals nowadays than we could then. So it can help, give weather conditions, traffic patterns, counts, all that kind of thing. So
Larry, does that mean that, isn't your other signal budgets in the highway, the 36,000?
it's 9,600. So
9,600,
yeah,
so
so I can talk about that when we get to engineering, but it's historically there's been an agreement with the city to maintain our traffic signals for $9,600. That doesn't get us very far anymore. That's an old agreement that's been just kind of an old interlocal agreement that's been rolling over and over. Talked to underneath the street department as well as engineering, on the city side. That's going to need to be revisited shortly in the future because it doesn't cover, like those issues that we had, it doesn't cover those. I have to pay for those again out of pocket. So I was able to, the city actually split that money with me last year because they didn't notify me they were going to do the work before they did it. So that's neither here nor there, but we squared that out. But that was really in place back when all we really had to do was signal tech-wise was change light bulbs, and things have, grown exponentially from that point, so that's no longer gonna cover it, so.
And I think the only signal at that point was probably Springfield, 7th and Springfield
Probably,
maybe?
yeah, we've probably at least triple the amount of signals that were in that original agreement. I still have yet to find that original agreement. City doesn't have it, we don't have it, we don't know where it's at, so.
Gosh, the city's been gracious in carrying us for a while, haven't they?
Yeah, we've been getting by pretty,
That's
you know,
nice.
pretty easy here for years, so, but I'd like to take this opportunity, if we're gonna redo it, I'd like to redo all of our signals, possibly even have a maintenance agreement with a consultant that could be able to remotely access those and reboot those with some help from some of my guys' hardware needs and things like that. So,
But I guess, so like that 75, does that include the
does
90?
not include that, because I
Okay.
don't know what's gonna happen with that
All right.
9600.
Okay,
Whether
thank
the
you.
city's gonna continue to use that, and that's kind of a big, you know, pretty good deal. And this would be more to cover a study of all of the signals and be separate. I don't know it'd be that much, but I don't know how much a consultant would charge for that either, so that's just kind of a.
That would be in the engineering portion, not what we're.
Yes,
on in this
yeah,
one.
yeah. Any other questions on that? So next one I think I have mine is 44000, and then going along with that is 4404. Those are both, they were both 200,000, I'm asked for a 500,000 increase. That's mainly just so we can do some of the things on the roadways that aren't covered under MVH. Things like guardrail signage, some limited drainage things, some pedestrian amenities and things like that. I would like to see some of those be able to, you know, rolled into some of this, and a lot of the funding that we have now is just going back into resurfacing that road. So I like to start looking at roadways as a whole rather than just piecemeal them as pavement only. And that is an increase from, I think, it was 200,000 in each of those lines, I think approved before, maybe 250, I can't remember.
450 to 1 million,
Yep.
both.
Yep. Community, 44008 is the community crossings matching grant. Ask that be $1 million, just so we can keep applying for that maximum amount. Currently this year, we've only been awarded the 215,000. I plan to reapply in the fall. But I'll have to adjust some of our cost estimates with the increase in prices and things. 44043 is NPDS stormwater. That's really just a placeholder number. If there's issue with the permit or anything that we need to do, or things that we need to do to our facilities to comply with the permit. They're usually, you know, minor things, dispose of a few chemicals or something like that. So it's really just in case we need something to rework a plan or something like that. So that's just kind of a catch-all placeholder. It used to be $20,000, never got used for a while, so I cut it in half. I think I used, what did I use out there last year, Cheryl? Wasn't much, was it? Okay, so I'm right under that, so.
Just almost all of it.
Yeah, well, last year, 454, right?
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
2021. 9546 this year.
Yeah,
That's so far this year,
So
will there be
far
more?
this year, you've used almost all of it, all but 500, 400.
yep.
Will there be more out of that?
Shouldn't be any more. All our permitting
not
update
spent
is
anything this
already
year.
done for the year, so that's usually what that's, you know, that's for, so that should be done.
They haven't spent anything this year, you're looking wrong.
This whole-
Oh, we're looking at the wrong line. So
Yeah.
they haven't spent anything this year. Is that right?
Oh, yeah, they've not submitted anything yet. Total of 2022 expenditures, zero.
Like I said, most of that's just just a placeholder number. I planned on rolling that over to use that money for a stormwater plan for the new south unit that we got, so I can kind of do some site work on that. You know, take care of some drainage as well as some storage of materials and things like that. But that would just be just a site layout for that. Any other questions on that? 44020 is the Spring Hill project. I've asked for 200,000 in there. For the most part, that's all paid for. I got a little bit of inspection money that has to be covered, and then I just put a placeholder in there for any change orders that we might have in that, on that project. We've already cut our check to NDOT. I've got enough in here. The rest of the year should be able to cover most of the inspection. The 200,000 is just to cover change orders. In inspection, I'm sorry, I left out inspection. 44030 is Clinton Road. I just asked for 500,000 of that. We're still just working on design, so that's just gonna be a kind of recurring theme over the next several years. Hopefully, we can get into land acquisition next year, as far as appraising and everything else, and then the year after, start the purchasing. think that's all for my edit. Any other questions on that?
Can I just say you're wonderful? I mean, just, we went from, where were we last year? 6,258,000 to 5,031,000 this year. You cut your budget by, request by 1.2 million?
Yeah, edit's gonna be one of those budgets that's gonna fluctuate based on what we have going on as far as capital projects. I mean, we may have a big project, like last year, I know last year we did the matching grant for Spring Hill and everything else, so we had to pay our 20% match at that point. So when we have those, a lot of those NDOT contracts are front-loaded, so we may have a big expenditure one year and then the next year be a little low, so.
All right. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Lily. Thanks, Chris.
Okay. What do you have next?
Well, we can move on if you want to the rest of my budgets, if you want. GIS we can touch on, but it's mainly salaries, so there's nothing else in that one. I think Cheryl put group insurance in there, but we don't know about the salaries. Like she said, she's gonna advertise 10%.
Yeah, we can,
I put it in as 5, but it doesn't, you know, I mean,
yeah.
that one's all salaries. So I just got the 2 positions. I will let you know that Ryan did leave us. He went to work for Terro DDC, so I do have an open position now, and I'm trying to figure out what we're doing with that at this point. So
Okay.
maybe changes, but right now it's just two salaries funded out there.
All right. Move on with that one.
All right, we'll move on to engineering. 4972.
Engineering.
I saved the best for last. In engineering, but it's pretty simple, pretty straightforward for the most part. Mostly salaries. Like we said, Cheryl's gonna advertise 10%. Maybe put in a group insurance number in there. Office supplies, just left $1,000 in there. It's just in case we need, office supplies. The maintenance and repair of signal lights is in there as well. That's the agreement I alluded to, the 9,600 that we have with the city right now. So where that goes in the future, I don't know yet, but I'm just leaving that 9,600, so. Equipment new, I have in there $5,000. That's really just a placeholder in case we need some equipment for the field or field work or anything like that. It's just typically something we don't use, usually about half of, so could potentially cut that one, but it's really just a placeholder. And that's really all in engineering. Is there any questions?
More for, what was that? Go ahead, David.
No, I said that was pretty simple. Go ahead.
Cheryl and the commissioners, maybe even Larry, are there many other things that we have that are in agreement with the city, like the signals and stuff like that? I guess I wasn't aware that there were things that we paid the city for to do.
Not that I'm aware of. Signals is just one of those things that the county really didn't have very many signals, so the city had, they had about 60 or 70 of them or something like that, so it was always easier to have them just take over. We had an interlocal agreement, but like I said in the past, it was mainly changing light bulbs and things like
Okay.
that. Now you get into signal timing, updating, hardware and and the programming and doing the counts and detectors and all. I mean, it gets pretty involved now, and they're struggling to get people to maintain their signals.
Right.
So it's, it's a little bit more difficult now.
I just didn't know if there were a lot of things that we did with the city where it was intertwined
I
together.
don't think there's anything else, that I'm aware of.
Not just highway department related or engineering or anything, just anything in general.
There are things that we do to help each other out, like road-wise, and if we need a camera run through a line, they'll come out and help us out, and we help them out in
Okay.
certain things. So we just kind of do that to help each other out, but as far as exchanging, funds or anything for that, no.
Okay.
All right. We move on to Cume Bridge, if that's all right.
Yes. Very next one.
So I really only have the one salary in there, so that's paid for out of that. So he works for the highway, but it's actually covered under Cume Bridge. Office supplies, leave 500 in there, really a placeholder in case we need anything. Contractual services, I just wanted to bump that up from 42.5 to the 50,000, just to cover an increase for a few contracts that we have that are kind of annually creeping up a little bit. I want to make sure I have enough cushion to cover those contracts. I don't want to. Right now, I've got like 811 is one of the contracts we pay for out of there. So it's our locating service. So we get, I'm anticipating a little bit of an increase in that. Right now, I think we pay 95 cents a locate that comes in. So if there's more work going on, then we get charged a little bit more. If there's, I'm anticipating them possibly increasing that from 95 cents to maybe $1, something like that. So I want to be able to, especially with all that, and they're having trouble finding people, so I can see them doing things on their side that may cause that thing to increase a little bit. So, but I just want to make sure I would be able to cover those, in case there's a little bit of an increase for those. 33,310 is contractual service other. That is half of my engineering budget. So typically they probably advertise, Cheryl, what, the 100? Yeah, typically it's around 75,000. It has been over the last, 4 or 5 years at least. So, yeah. Yeah. It just depends on, my engineering budget depends on, I try to keep it pretty much close to the same on what historically it was funded, half by edit and half by Cume Bridge, and then we started collecting revenue for permitting. So as that revenue goes up, I need less money out of those other accounts. So the goal would be self-sustaining with permits, but I'm not quite sure we're gonna get there, but I'm trying to get close.
Like the permits for,
Road cuts. So any utilities going out there, we've got a big push in fiber right now. So we, I don't know, a couple years ago, Joint came through and did a lot of boring and stuff. That almost tripled what I was taking in right-of-way permits just for that year. So I continue to get more and more, as they continue to expand Joint as well as the other fiber companies are out there as well. So.
and is that something that we have to charge them? Or is that,
We
the
don't.
reason I'm asking is that I was talking to a utility at one point, and they said Vigo County is the only place that charges per foot of cable or whatever. Clay County doesn't charge, Sullivan doesn't charge, Vermillion doesn't charge anything. What does that, the permit fees covers?
Well, right now it goes into revenue. Basically, it pays for my permanent inspector is the theory of it, because then he goes out and checks to make sure they're not damaging our roadways. So the thing is when they get the permits, we charge the fees, and that covers the permit inspector and anything else that we need to do as far as going out, checking on them, making sure they're doing their, reestablishing the right-of-way correctly, if they're in the pavement, if they've cut it properly, if they've compacted it properly, if we have issues. It's all part of the permitting process. So some of the counties that you're saying that aren't charging are some of those more rural counties that aren't as densely populated, so utilities aren't quite as high. But if you go to places like Hamilton County, Boone County, Hendricks County, all of those places are charging for utilities because there's so many out there and they're doing so much work that there's so much risk of damage that this is a way to pay for that inspector because of the work they're doing.
I appreciate it.
Yeah, that's the goal. Asphalt now is, almost $100 a ton, and they're going out, it drives me crazy, but I think it seems like every time we go to pave somewhere, it's a month or two later and they've cut it open with a utility. It's to help deter that, also let them know, hey, if you got plans and you guys think, you need to let us know, and that way we can go. We try to communicate, best we can, but sometimes things happen, they have breaks, they have, things they have to do, but I understand that, but it's frustrating from my standpoint when we spend the money to make a nice, improved road, and then have a utility company come and cut it.
We built Oak Ridge Park subdivision and had the same type
Yep.
of thing. We were going to put the roads in, and we asked all the utilities to come and lay their utilities so that we could go
Yep.
ahead with the road after. Nope, invariably they were
Yep.
boring under the roads
Yep. It's very frustrating.
and tearing up the roads. Yeah, I get you. Sorry.
$33,500 is bridge and pipe replacement, asking for 1.5 million out of that. That is to cover, bridge construction over the next over next year. With not knowing exactly, the estimates are what they are right now. When we come to bid, I mean, they seem to be quite a bit more. So if we do make adjustments in this, we'll adjust this line. But that's just cover a couple bridges, and then that'll probably end my construction cycle that I've had in the last couple years. And then we'll go off, and that number will come down next year, to more balance that budget out, help build up that cash balance. So in, 2, 3, 4 more years, we can do some more bridges. You do a few years of planning to get those under construction, and then all of a sudden they hit you, and they're supposed to be $1 million, and they're 1.5. So.
Which bridges are you looking at doing?
Right now we're on Bridge 322, which is 13th Street over Lost Creek. We're replacing that one. It's $1.5 million. Several other bridges are in design, including Hasselberger Bridge 205. We're looking at clear spanning that to get rid of the center pier to stop the debris collection that's going on there. We're also working on 317, 330, Bridge 77, Bridge 37. Seems like there's one I'm forgetting. 37 and 77 are both in design right now. 37 should go to construction next year. 77 is French Drive over Prairie Creek. That's the historical side. I'm waiting on federal funding for that because I'm going to move that historic bridge into the park. So that'll be about a $2 million project. Build a new bridge there in French and hopefully resurface that out to Prairie Creek Park. So.
Nice.
I have someone asking me about the one on Battle Row.
Battle Row, we actually, I'm looking at community crossings for that stretch to widen the 2 bridges on Battle Row that are narrow. We have a lot of complaints from farmers, and I mean, rightly so. They're narrow projects, but they are expensive to redo. The quotes we had were $250,000 to $300,000 a piece for those, and that was to convert them to aluminum D-box structures rather than bridges and make them a lot wider. So we're working on that one. That was community crossings I applied for in the winter and actually didn't get awarded. So we'll apply again in the fall, and hopefully we get the award, and we'll do those next year.
I had 4 farmers complaining that one has to go an extra 7 miles, one has to go an extra 13 miles to get around to their
Right.
fields. So.
Yep. We fight that over a lot of bridges in the rural parts.
I'm
I mean,
sure.
they were put in, they were really narrow, and farm equipment's only gotten wider, so it's even more difficult for them to get around.
No doubt. Thank you for what you do.
36,700 operating expenses, 15,000. That's just been what we use to support GIS, engineering, Cume Bridge. We go training, things like that. Anything that's just an operating expenses line item. 37,650 education, counseling, and training. 2,500 for that. Most of the conferences that I go to are free if they're put on by LTAP or NDOT or something like that. But every once in a while there is one that we have to go pay for to continue my CEUs. And then equipment new is the big one. I asked for, Travis touched on, me coming with the needs and everything. Our excavator and our backhoe are both at the end of their lifespans. So we're looking at a 3-year lease to replace the excavator and the backhoe. And if we get that, it's $3,250, $132,500 for next year, and there'll be basically 3 payments of that, and then we'll have a new excavator and backhoe this year to get started, help do our projects, and eliminate some of those breakdowns we get on some of those big pipe jobs and things that we got out there. And I think that is it on Cume Bridge, if you have any questions. I have it with highway. Yes, local road and street is pretty much the same. I left all of it. With the exception, I did back down some. Yeah, I flip-flop. I backed some repair equipment down and increased equipment new for local road and street, and that was just to offset. We're getting some new equipment. I'm anticipating hopefully needing to fix it less. And then put the $25,000 into equipment new to help offset some of the higher costs. The next couple of years, I'd like to replace some of the crew trucks. We were getting them for about $28,000, $29,000 a piece. Now they're 36, 37,000 apiece. So I'm trying to offset that side, so I can replace some of those, get rid of some of those half-ton trucks that are at the end of their life and rusted out, so. But with the exception of that, local road and street basically stayed the same.
Yep.
There are no salaries in local road and street, so.
All right, Larry, what I'm gonna ask, I hate to do it, you're in this building, it's easier for you to come over.
Sure.
I'm gonna ask, the juvenile center, since they've gotta come over here and to stay somewhat on the schedule. I don't anticipate juvenile center to take that long.
Sure.
So if you'd stick around for a minute, I'd appreciate it.
Sure can, absolutely.
Have the juvenile center come up. Is that all right with you?
Yep, that's
Sorry.
fine. Thank you.
Say again? Sure.
We don't have anything,
That's in pink.
we don't have anything for that.
Juvenile corrections, 0384.
03.
0234?
I got something. 0384.
0384?
0203. That's court. You might be looking at juvenile.
Yes, juvenile court, sorry. Sorry. We were under juvenile court accidentally, sorry, thank you. Yeah, it's like, what, wait a minute. No, you're fine, we were in the wrong category.
Okay, Norm, you ready?
Yeah. If you have questions, let me start going through it.
Well, let me make sure I'm at the right one.
So there's no real increase in anything for the 2s, 3s, and 4s. There's some movement around a little bit, but there's no, we're not asking for any increases. The 1s, we obviously have issues there. Did y'all receive the letter, or at least were able to look at that letter that I submitted with my budget? Yes?
Yeah.
So if you really want to kind of skip over that letter to page 2, if you compare the 22 and 23 budgets, the 2 series reflects changes of returning to 19,000 from the vehicle line item back into food. We saw an increase in the cost of food to feed the detainees and provide school snacks. This increase was between 5.5% to 7% at the time the budget letter came out. Actually came in about 5.5% was the increase in the Series 3. And so I want to make sure that we're on the same page. 2 years ago, we had 75,000 in the food line. Okay, it'd been that way for a while. We removed 20,000 of it for the purchase of a vehicle or for something. And so we're putting that back in. We're not going to get another vehicle next year, and so we're just putting that money back in the food. We had an audit come through, and they're being pretty particular with respect to the grant we get from the Department of Education for the after-school lunches. And so we, after the audit, were stripped of about 350 meals that we had to come up with the money for and pay. We were hoping they would pay them, but those meals that we had to pay were because of things that were kind of outside of our control. They were more Canteen's fault. Buy American, they had rice that was from Canada. So there were just some things that with the Canteen's cook staff that prevented us from getting paid for those meals. Example, they gave applesauce for a couple, 2 or 3 days for the dessert or whatever, and they didn't like that. So they wouldn't pay for it after 2 days. They want a different variety of fruit. So just some, we have a different auditor. We only go through these audits every 4 years. They were in our building for a week, from 7 until 7 at night, and so it was a task. So, we just need to have that money back in the food line for next year, just to make sure. The Series 3, there were no increases in total budget, but I did move money around to fulfill the needs that we currently have. I've increased the line item 33300 from 4,000 to 8,000 to cover maintenance agreement for the security system. We put the security system in, there's a maintenance agreement for it with upgrades and tech support, that's what covers that. The repair to building line item was reduced from 7,000 to 6,000. In addition, line item 37,650 was reduced from 7,500 to 4,000, so it's kind of a wash in that area. I just moved some money around. There's no increases. In the 4 series, we did increase the 19,000, as was stated earlier, to 0 for vehicles, and we put that money back in the food line. So really, in the general fund budget, there's no, except for the 1 series, and, that's a whole nother issue. There's no increases in any of the 2s, 3s, or 4s. That's in the general fund budget. And I say that's no increases over, if you want to just only compare to last year.
Any questions from committee?
I just noticed that there's a 100 possibility.
I don't know if maybe I confused you.
Oh, okay, yes, right.
I think I've counted for $1,000 of it, but I think there was a calculation error.
Say it one more time, I can't.
I think there might have been a calculation error. I haven't found all of it yet, but the 19,000 moved from vehicles, you put 20 in food. So I guess at the end of the day, I've got an additional $1,974 in your budget from last year.
Oh,
I know
well,
1,000 of it's for that vehicle,
and
and I
I've
thought
made
I-
mistakes before, so.
Yeah, I thought I found it. But
So I
can't
took
remember
20
what
out
it
from
was.
last year and put 1,000 in gasoline and, yeah, so I think that yeah, I may have made a mistake. And if I did, it's not because I want extra money, it should have all just went back to what it was the previous year. And I'll look at this again to make sure I didn't mess up. If I did, I'll let Calissa know, and I'll send you an email or something.
Okay. Any further questions on Councilman Norris?
Yeah, in from the last year, I put 1,000 in gasoline, maybe 1,000 in safety, but the other 19 went for the used vehicle to transport the food.
Okay.
And I was trying to get that 20 back in the food line, and I may have not done it right.
Just out of curiosity, when you had to pay for the extra 350 meals,
Say again?
when you had to pay for the extra 350 meals,
Right,
where'd you pay them from?
food,
In your general fund budget?
yes, that's the only place I have it.
Okay.
We-
But I just
We were
that was in
expecting.
this year, though, in
Yes.
calendar year 20?
Yep. And so my issue is, I don't want this gal to walk in from the auditor for the Department of Education and spot check us again next year, and then all of a sudden us not be in compliance, or at least the way she sees it. I mean, Andrea Moeller now has to have, weekly meetings with her. It's just whether before we weren't getting the full service, or this person is really being particular. Either way, we're having to jump through a lot more hoops to get that money. And so when things are good, we get 3/4 of our daily meal paid for from the Department of Education on school days. We still have to pay for after-school stuff, evening meals, and weekends, holidays, things like that when they're not in school. But we're in school pretty much all year, summer school, so we really try to tap into those state and federal monies. But when they came in, there were just we resolved those issues with Canteen. We've worked up a different menu. The people that work at the jail that make our food, they've been through some training that they're required to go through, Billy Joy. And so, we think we've resolved that, but for a minute, it hurt us. I just don't want to get caught next year and not have the money.
Because that was the whole basis for being able to decrease your budget last year, was because you had the other funds that you could pull out of for food. That's correct, right?
Yes, so
Okay.
we believed last year that we'd be okay if everything stayed the same. And then
It didn't.
the auditor came in, and it didn't. And there was a couple things we didn't see. Number one, I mean, to be honest with you, we didn't have any idea about the inflation that's hitting just every little bitty thing we're getting. I mean, different topic altogether, but in 7 of 2021, Serious Solutions, it was $2.83 a gallon for gas. And 6/7 of 22, it's $5.22 a gallon. That just, and that thing alone is hitting applesauce being taken to the jail. And that, of course, Canteen is sharing that cost with its consumers. That's why it went up 5.5%. Let alone we had to change the menu to qualify for those grants. And obviously those grants are helping us, but, if something outside of our control, kind of makes it difficult, so.
Thank you. Any questions from this account? All right. I'll go to the non-reverting.
Okay. So this one has changed quite a bit. If I can find it. So I don't know what you're looking at. I can only know what I submitted. And so I'm just going to go through each line to make sure that what I submitted is what you're seeing. Institutional supplies, 7,000. Gasoline, I increased it to 4. I think last year it was at 1,000, and I just increased that because I don't have a clue. And you're probably going to end up seeing me before the end of the year asking for gas. We're just running out. We're almost out. Wearing apparel, 6. Some of these things I reduced the general fund in order to increase this, because it just makes sense to use money that comes from Clay County and Park County and Putnam County and Greene and Owen to pay for some things and reduce the amount of burden on local taxpayers. In the 3 series, building repair, we've increased that to 30, well, I'm sorry, yeah, that stays the same at 35,000 is what we had last year for this year. There's still a few things we need to take care of. Obviously, the council and the commissioners have worked wonderful with us over this past year, getting things done, rec room ceiling, but there are some other issues. For instance, when I first started just a year and a half, 2 years ago, to buy a lock for a door and a cell was about $800. Now it's $2,500. And of course, there's only one place you can buy them, because the place was built so long ago, you can't get the locks at Walmart. So you can get them in a certain place. And so every time a lock goes bad in a door, which, they're opened all the time and closed all the time, those mechanics work, we're talking about $2,500 for one lock. So that, we can't have kids locked in cells. And we had that happen earlier this year. So 35,000 for building repair, no different than last year. Incentives, 3,000. Those incentives is up from 2. Those are the things that we use to do anything for the detainees. If they get 5 credits in school, if they get 2 lessons or subjects done in the high set, which is GED program, then they get to have lunch of their picking. I go get it and bring it to them. There are other incentives we have at the end of summer school. We'll try to have a little cookout for them. If they behave a certain level, they get what's called detention bucks, and we take those detention bucks and they're allowed to purchase pizza on a Friday night. So if they're a good kid all week, then they can say, I want to spend some of my detention bucks for pizza or an extra phone call or an extra visit or a candy bar or whatever. And so these incentives will help us do that. So that's what that's for. Of course, safety. That could be any number of things, from the film we put over the windows at the control room to make them impenetrable, really, to locks, to handcuffs, to anything that we need that falls under the safety guidelines. And then education, that's a little bit of a reduction in the general fund, but an increase in this. We're letting other counties pay for us to be educated. 80 hours of education is required by each person that works there, and 120 is required by the director. And so, Cindy, my assistant director, who came with me tonight, and the administrative staff has been through some administration training this year. Every time a new person gets hired, they go to what's called MAC training. Even though that training is free with the Department of Corrections, we still have per diem, hotel, gasoline, all that stuff to get them there. So that's kind of why that's up a little bit. But again, this is other people paying for it, not us. In the 2 series, I wanted to add a couple different line items that didn't appear last year. I wanted to put an extra $15,000 in food, and I just want to do that because I'm just worried about this auditor. There was absolute indication that she was going to, quote, pop in from time to time to make sure things are going okay. And I'm just worried that we'll lose more meals and then we won't have the money. So obviously, if we don't have it, it's not a big deal. If we don't spend it, it goes right back in the fund. Plus, we're serving out-of-county people, so this gives us a chance to take that user fee and use it for what it's intended for, which is take care of those kids. Contractual services, I'm going to skip that for a minute. Go to new equipment, $30,000 in new equipment. That's just any number of things that we may want to do over there. I don't have anything in particular that we want to do, but there's all kinds of equipment that we need to purchase for that. Everything from a $2,000 projection screen that we're able to use in this classroom, to an overhead projector for the new teacher, to to a basketball goal outside, there's just anything that we need, our picnic tables that the kids sit at need replaced, we're just gonna nickel and dime it all year long. This will give us a chance to purchase some of those things. So let's talk about the contractual services. So in 2012, the Sheriff's Office, the commissioners, entered into a contract with Quality Correctional Care to provide medical coverage for the jail. When they did that, they forgot to put the juvenile center in that contract. So since 2012, we have not had any medical contract for coverage at the juvenile center. Now, what have we been doing since then? Well, we've been just kind of winging it. That's just the absolute truth. And so, as of late, the medical standards that used to be optional with the Department of Correction are now becoming mandatory, and we have got to have a contract that's signed. And so this contractual services, $50,000 of it as a ballpark figure is going to be our portion or our responsibility for those things that we need to do with QCC. So they come to our facility 1 hour a day in the morning to do med pass and to do sick call, if you will. They also, will see people through telehealth, or we'll bring them to the jail so they can see them. Referrals for mental health services that they provide for community outreach once the detainee leaves. Things that we need for the standards that we're required to follow for the Department of Corrections is what that's going to cover. Now, I know that the jail in their budget has asked for an increase to help staff, and you'll get to that when you get to the jail, that will staff the jail with maybe an additional person, and that's where this is going to come from. Part of that is going to come to part of their job is to come to our facility for 1 hour. So it's just the juvenile center's medical care is going to be funded out of 2 places. One, out of the sheriff's budget through the jail, wherever you guys fund that from. And the other one is going to be from these out-of-county costs that are going to help pay for our medical that we did not have a contract for. So that's the big increase. The other part of that contractual services is that we do not yet know what our Title I money will be from the school corporation. we typically would have that information given to us by April or May. And Cindy and I met with the school corporation administration just a week or two ago, and they do not have those figures. So 2 years ago, I should say, we had all of our counseling and group therapy paid for from Title I. Last year, I was able to get a grant from United Way. And so I've got to be prepared next year that if the United Way grant doesn't come in, or if Title I doesn't fund it, that we're still able to have those group therapy sessions with the kids. So that's what the remainder of that's for. And the rest of that after that is the possibility of working with a part-time social worker to try to help transition from being incarcerated and getting services for the kids when they leave, so they don't recidivate. And again, a reminder, all of that's to be paid for out of the non-reverting fund for, out-of-county detainees.
Norm, question for you. What, or even Cheryl, I don't know who's gonna have these figures. What's your non-reverting intake as far as money-wise this year?
This year,
Yeah. And how much is owed? You usually have those figures, Norm.
how much is in there?
How much is still owed? Usually you have like this county still owes.
Yeah,
this.
so right now the account has 331,620.51 and we have 54,000 that's yet to be billed. And then I have reduced the out-of-county population to no more than 5 because of the food problem.
Okay.
And two things have really hurt us that's a local issue. Number one is the court would only see detention issues every other Thursday. That slowed down people getting out. And we also have adult inmates, meaning those people that are juvenile that have been charged as adult. So if you are there are certain crimes that if you're above the age of 16, you commit those crimes, like say armed robbery or murder or criminal recklessness with a firearm, you're charged as an adult automatically. The jail no longer holds those. So in 2019, 2020, when the court determined the kid was going to be charged as an adult, they took him straight to jail. Now, they can't be within sight or sound of an adult inmate until they're found guilty. So even if we had someone, let's say for the sake of argument, that was arrested for murder and charged as a juvenile, they would stay in our facility through the whole process. Even if they're charged as an adult, they stay at our facility through the whole process until they behave such a manner that the court finds it necessary to move them on. So though, at one time, we had 6 people out of 20 beds that were adults, that were, even though they were juvenile age, they were charged as adults, and we had to hold them. And when that place was built, it just wasn't built like that. Yeah, I mean, So for those reasons, there are lots of reasons why population's up, meals up, transports are up, all those things. So. I'm sorry? Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so
Oh, yeah.
20 beds, you're full.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that's okay, thank you.
Yeah, I mean, and it's, we dropped down to 16, and then Terrell Police bring in 4. And then now, and so it just, not to blame Terrell Police, but they're the majority of our,
Going for the money here.
yeah. We're trying to get, runaways can only be held for 1 day. That's the law. So we're trying to get people to take the kids home unless there's an issue at home. So we don't, because all that is just revolving door. And that's an issue we have with Jabal as well, is trying to get, parents to be responsible, not us, so.
Yeah. So, if parents were responsible, we wouldn't be there.
All right. Any further questions for Norm?
On the non-reverting or anything? No. Okay.
I appreciate
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Again, as always, if you ever have any questions or you need some information, give me an email or something. Thank you.
Thank you.
Larry, you want to come back up? Thank you. Highway.
Highway, yep.
All right, it's all yours.
All right, so we'll touch on highway, go through administration, mostly salaries. We get down into building maintenance, though, printing, I think it left the same, liability insurance left the same. Workman's comp was an $80,000 figure that I got an email from Tammy from the insurance company. $1,000 in phone, $35,000 in electricity. Gas, water, and fuel, I think I've asked to increase that to $25,000. I'm trying to figure out, we got some propane usage and stuff that's kind of gone up and stuff. I'm trying to get a hold of and maybe explore some alternative means to try to help bring that number back down. Solid waste sewage, $600. I think it's been the same. Building repair, like to leave $50,000 in there for any needs we need going forward. Land lease stayed the same at $3,000. Supplement to community corrections, I dropped it down to $1,500 from, I think it was $14,000 was what we asked for last year. We no longer have to pay for a salary for that or feed them anymore with the way Bill is running his operations. So we don't need a whole lot of money to do away with it all in case we need it. But the way he's operating now, we don't have to feed them lunch anymore. He's doing them kind of in two different crews, and then we don't have to pay for that salary anymore. So that is being handled there. So that's a pretty good savings for us. Education, counseling, and training, $10,000. You know, any kind of training I like to these guys is good. You know, and service agreements $500. So, any questions on administration side of it? 530.
Any questions from committee? Nope.
Okay, we'll move on to 531, which is maintenance and repair. Salaries, we have operating supplies of 42.5. We have left that the same. Other supplies of 6,600. Miscellaneous supplies at 7,000, and those are just for to cover anything basically miscellaneous that we need in any of the fleet kind of thing. Tools at 2,000, and then shop and field tools at 5,000. Shop and field tools are where we buy our shovels and everything else. $2,000 for the tools covers, we pay $400 for our mechanics for any tools that they need throughout the year. So I have 4 mechanics, so I bumped that. Actually, I have 5 mechanics counting Jones. So that's why it's $2,000. So it's $400 allowance for those as far as tools go. Yep, 5. Yeah, shop and field tool, $5,000. That's shovels, rakes, lulls, anything.
You've got 2,000 for the request. It was 5,000 last year, but you got it down to 2,000. Should it be 5,000?
I had it on 5,000 on mine. Maybe I put it in wrong. Tools was 2,000, and shop and field tools should be 5,000.
So shop and field
260.
should be 5,000.
I may have flipped them around when I put them in there too.
But
Yeah.
it should be 5. $43,101 should be 5,000 in Crest instead of.
43,101 should be 5,000, and that's what it's historically been. I don't know if I spend 5,000 every year. It's just a placeholder for. It's basically any handheld tool that we use out there on the
Yeah.
roadway.
Yeah, 1,500 so far this year, 36 last year.
Yeah, so it fluctuates, depends on how many shovels go flying off the back of the truck and everything else. So we try to rein those things in, but stuff does happen, so.
Okay.
Seems to increase when we have storm events too. I think those things get left out when we have a lot of debris cleanup and things like that, so.
Sure.
Any questions on Highway 2, 531?
Councilman Thacker, you good?
Highway 3, this is basically with the help of the auditor's office. I've tried to set this up as my restricted fund, which was 1173, which I don't really reflect on here. But 1176, Highway 3, I try to I try to set that up so that 100% of those funds that are allocated there, I can go straight towards my restricted fund. Because the state tells me that I have to split my MVH distribution in two, 50-50 right down the middle, one to 1176, one to 1173. So I've set Highway 3 up to cover that, which is mainly any kind of repair, maintenance, or reconstruction, anything or construction that we do on any of the roadways. So anything that's eligible for that restricted fund, I try to put in Highway 3.
Yes.
Yes.
I will tell you, it's kind of a strange thing. DLGF doesn't want you to budget it in 1173 to go ahead and you budget, but when our money comes in and we do our audit, we have to split it. So
Right.
basically at the end of the year or during the year, Jennifer sends in payroll for those hours that can be dedicated to the restricted. And we pay them out of one and do an adjustment to 1173 because that's where the cash is.
Yep.
Hopefully.
It's
the
a tracking, yeah, it's a
Hopefully the county
tracking
highway
nightmare.
engineers and all of them are working to get this legislation to change it because it's a nightmare for all.
We're hoping, we're working on that, but I don't think it's gonna be something that's gonna be fixed.
But I will say
relatively soon.
Larry has finally, this last couple of years, we've finally got a system going now by him trying to budget it all in that one, so we kind of know how much cash he's gonna be using from 11.
So the things I put in that, I put paving and repairs in there, 1,570,000, bituminous at 50,000, and then gravel and stones at 200,000. So any of that stone that I put out there on the roads when we were doing grade work on all those county roads, I capture that out of this fund too, so. And we put a lot of the salaries in there and everything we can capture. I get that report to Cheryl, she moves to 1173, and we try to satisfy our 50-50 requirement.
A perfect way to work.
Well, I hate that we have to
An
do that.
acceptable
I
way.
understand on the legislative side why they did that, but it makes it difficult for
Strategic.
highway departments as well as auditors to help track those things and report those things. So I'm not sure how they're actually getting reported across the state. I know there's some smaller counties that are struggling with that, but it is what it is. So.
Yep.
Exactly.
I was gonna say, now that you
And
guys got your work
I saw
system
there
worked
was
out.
whispers of changes
and
coming
we-
now, dropping it from 50-50 to 70-30.
And we make issue of it at the auditors conferences, every auditor does about it.
Doing away with it. I mean, they're talking about with fuel being that, just spending the fuel tax, which means my revenue stream goes out the window. So those are all things that we have to take into consideration. So. Yes, so any adjustments of the fund, I'd like to come out of that paving repair line. That's the one that, you know, I'm gonna, whatever that's the dollar amount I'm gonna spend on the road. So if it's less, it's less, but that's the one. Everything else is something I need. I will, if you do want to talk about it, I forgot to mention fuel, which was a big one. I kind of skimmed over that, maybe subconsciously.
Okay.
I had $280,000 in there for fuel this year. I'm probably gonna be out of that by September, October, hopefully. I make it that long. Not sure I'll make it that long. Last year, we were spending between $15,000 to $18,000 a month in fuel costs. The one for June it's already approaching 27,000, so we're creeping up towards at least double. So
That's what
I tried to budget about $30,000, so I just increased it to $350. $30,000 a month. There are some months that we're a little bit lower on fuel, just depends on what we are. I am working with the guys on cutting down, you know, no idle time, riding together as much as possible. We're trying to trim the fat where we can, but we're really as efficient as we can be. We just don't go out there and drive around and do nothing. You know, we're out there doing work, so short of cutting services, there's not a whole lot I can do to impact our fuel usage. Right now, with the seasonal guys that I have hired on this year for mowing, I only have 2 that I've got hired on and filled. Kind of been difficult positions to fill. Those are the only 2 that are mowing north and south right now to help rein that in, since we're in kind of a dry spell right now. We've hit everything once, at least once, maybe twice, depending on the road. I'm hoping they can keep up with it over summer, and I don't have to get any more mowers out this summer until maybe in the fall when it starts to grow a little bit more and clean it up for winter. So those are kind of things. We're not doing any stockpiling that we normally would do. It makes our jobs go, you know, not quite as fast if we have to go run and get the material, you know, while we're waiting on the job. So 2-day job may stretch out to a 3 or 4 day job because we don't have all the material on site or where we can get it usefully. But if we don't need it, I'd rather not stockpile for it at this point. So cut down all those things. So we trim the fat best we can on all of that. We'll see how it goes. We are on 4-day work weeks, so that, not only saves on the guys coming to work, it saves on those, the ones that are using the take-home vehicles coming to work as well, so. But fuel at this point is what it is, and I'm not for sure where it's gonna go.
Thank you, thank you, thank you.
Becker, you have anything?
All right. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Thank
No
you.
problem. Have a good one.
You too. Baker Tilly, you're up.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm Jason Simler with Baker Tilly, and also with me is Caitlin Cheek, and we're here to go over a draft of what we call the Comprehensive Financial Plan. The county, as has hired us a little over a year ago to put together kind of a long-term plan for the county to review. We've had met with the auditor and the commissioners a couple weeks ago with a draft, and then also wanted to present a draft to you as well and get your feedback. Just kind of a step back, just a little bit. As you know, we've been hired to work on both a long-term comprehensive financial plan, which is just kind of a report, kind of a tool for your use, which is our goal was to get this to you about this time of year, for you to help use it during your budget process. And we'll go through this here. Caitlin will go through this with you here in a few minutes, but it looks back at the last 3 years of your finances for your major funds, and then projects the next 3 years. So our goal is twofold. One, to have you have this available, the information be available to look at your potential revenues coming this year, and then for the next couple years, so they'll help you be able to prepare your budget for this year. Once we have that information for your 2022 budget, which I know you're working in right now, then the next step is once we have a better handle on what your cash flow is for the next couple years and cash balances, we're going to take that and then also look at your capital projects. And then take those capital projects and try to match them with your available revenue. And then determine if there's a shortfall, if it's a project that we might need to wait for a couple years and accumulate funds, be able to fund for, or if it's a project that's a high priority for the county that you can't wait, if we need to look at bonding options. So this, in connection with the county's ARP funds, I think will go hand in hand, with all your capital projects that you're looking at. So this is kind of the first step. Again, kind of looking at your cash flow. One, to help. Hopefully, this will be a tool that you can help as you're going through your budget process for 2023. But then it'll also give us a kind of good insight for the future on what you have available for your current operating costs, and then also your capital projects. So again, Caitlin will go through kind of the assumptions that we have, but we kind of want this to be very informal. When we met with Mr. Bramble and the commissioners, we kind of threw back, kind of talked about our assumptions. We kind of adjust some of our assumptions, based upon that discussion. So again, if there's anything here that you think, we should be more conservative, more aggressive, we definitely want your feedback, because we want this to be something that you can use and find useful as you're going through your budget process. So I'll let kind of Caitlin take it from here, but we'll just kind of go through this report and the assumptions that we used.
Hi, I'm Caitlin. Thanks for having me today. So I'm going to go in detail on the assumptions, which is the first 2 pages, because that really dictates all the numbers that follow. And again, feel free to jump out with any questions or any suggestions, any changes you'd like to see. So to begin, on the first page, we have our receipts assumptions. So our first little section here is about property taxes. So as you know, every year your property taxes are constrained by the maximum levy growth quotient. So you can see your distribution of maximum levy historically for 2019, 2020, 21, and for 2022. And you can see how historically you've allocated that maximum levy amongst these various funds. And then we did build in the growth quotient for 23 and 2024. and we assumed 4.5% growth for '23 and 4% growth for '24. And for this initial draft, we assumed that you allocated that maximum levy with the same proportions amongst those funds for those 2 years. And then below that is a discussion on circuit breaker. So again, we have our historical actual circuit breaker numbers, which have ranged from about 19% and then up to 21.6%. And then we assume that circuit breakers for 2023 and 2024 were maintained at that same 2022 level of 21.6 about percent there. And then bullet 3, that's our levy excess shortfall. So after accounting for the actual property taxes received into each fund and accounting for circuit breaker losses, this just trues up the actual property taxes that you receive, so it accounts for things like delinquencies. And then 4, it's kind of the last piece of the property tax related revenues. Our excise tax, FIT, and CVET miscellaneous revenues are all tied to property tax levies. And we assumed for 2022 and moving forward that you would receive a similar percentage of levy on those revenues as you did in 2021. So I kind of went through those pretty quickly. Those are all, again, tied to your property tax maximum levy and how those are allocated amongst those property tax funds. Do you have any questions about those assumptions? Okay. And then bullet 5 is our local income taxes. Again, we have historical. Since we've met with the commissioners, we did receive the supplemental 2022 income tax, so we input that information. And to be conservative, we don't assume any supplemental distributions moving forward. For motor vehicle highway and for local road and street, those are both based on DLGF estimates for 2022. And again, to be conservative, we assume no growth on either of those revenues for the projected years. 8, for all other miscellaneous revenues, they're shown as an average of the historical years unless otherwise noted. When we met with the commissioners, there was a few items that kind of went up and down, and got a little bit more information from the auditor on why that was. So we have some footnotes on some of those that were adjusted. And then 9, earnings on investment, sale property and tax sales, those are just assumed to be equal to 2021 moving forward. So those are all of our revenue assumptions. Did you have a question?
I do.
Yeah.
So I'm looking, and as I go through like the local income tax, the motor vehicle highway distributions and things like that, you're showing no growth.
Yes.
I find that, I'm assuming that you're saying that there's not going to be much growth in Vigo County.
No, these are the standard assumptions we typically put in place in our financial plans just to start off with, to be conservative. So when we get to the fund balance page, you'll see that many of them are on a downward trend, and you'll see kind of when I go through the disbursement assumptions as well. We assume kind of worst case scenario on receipts as we see it based on historical information. And then on disbursements, on the next page, we assume that you spend your entire budget, which is also not typically the case in all of your funds, which we have some supplemental schedules to show where you typically end up on your budget, so you can use that as a reference. But this beginning draft shows basically worst case assumptions for receipts, as well as assuming that you spend your entire budget in every fund. So we like to be as conservative as possible, and then we can build in growth in income taxes or other revenues that maybe you know about grants or anything like that. We could definitely include those. And similarly, on the disbursement side, any capital projects that you'd like to build in, we could add those as well. So we like to start out hopefully showing you the worst situation. So the next page is our disbursements assumptions. Like I mentioned, operating disbursements for 2022 are based on the budget unless otherwise noted. Parks and the highway department, we did use some capital information that we received, so we have that built in as well. And then for 23 and 24, we assumed a 3% growth on that budget each year. All right. So if we skip to page 3, this is our summary of all of the ending cash balances for all of the funds that we looked at for each year. So you can see 2019, 2020, and 2021. Those are your actual ending balances for each of these funds. So you can kind of see how they've been trending historically. And then based on all the assumptions we just walked through, assuming all of that comes to fruition, these are the ending balances that we project for 22 through 2024.
kind of be a result of your lit monies that were increased, which would be your special purpose, public safety, correctional rehab, and PSAP. Looks like that's the bulk of it.
There is a lot of growth in the income tax funds, and you can see based on even the budgets in some of those funds, they'll continue to add to their cash balances, assuming that there's no large capital projects or uses for those funds already earmarked. So the following schedules are each of the funds individually. So if we skip to the general fund, you can see the detail behind that cash balance. This fund by far has the most line items, but I'm gonna walk through the makeup of each of these schedules. So the first top section is your operating receipts. Lines 2 through 7 are those property taxes, circuit breaker, and those miscellaneous revenues tied to the property tax levy. So you could see the historical years and then projected forward. And then lines 8 and 9 are your income taxes. So this, in the general fund, we have our certified shares and our supplemental income tax distribution. Again, we don't assume that that moves forward in the projected years to be conservative. And you can see for 2022, that amount was a little bit over $460,000. And then lines 10 through 23, those are all the other miscellaneous revenues in the general fund. And I wanted to just point out line 21. In 2021, that line was a little bit over 4 million. And from discussing with the auditor, that was related to COVID relief funds. So for 2022, we assumed just an average of 2019 and 2020 for that line item.
Sorry, I'll just kind of interject here. Trying to answer your question, if you look at line 8, as Caitlin mentioned, that's the certified shares. And you can see that in 2022, we're expecting you're going to collect $6.3 million in certified shares. And that's what you've been certified, so that's what you'll collect. And as Caitlin mentioned, we just, to be conservative, we've kept that flat going. But and I think this is something we talked about the commissioners, we actually did have that growing because we do have your unemployment each month. So we can kind of show what your unemployment is, and it's been going down, hasn't been across the state. So we can kind of project, based upon your adjusted gross income, what we think you're going to collect, because there's a 2-year lag. But talking with the commissioners to be conservative, because there's also talk about a recession, so that's why we kind of kept it flat. But that's something, that's one of those assumptions, variables that we can put in here, or even show different scenarios. Is okay, this is what it looks like if it stays flat. What if we have a 5% growth for the next 3 years? We can kind of show that scenario, so you can kind of have a different sensitivity analysis as you're looking.
Perfect. Thank you.
All right. So on line 25, we have our total operating receipts. And again, you can see in 2021, it bumped up a little bit as a result of those COVID relief funds. And then for 2022, we're estimating it to be closer to $37.6 million. So then the next section is our operating disbursements. Again, for 2022, this is reflecting your budget and that you spend the entirety of the budget for the general fund, which you can see for personnel services this year, it was almost 31.8 million. And then in actual expenditures for 2021, it was closer to 28.4. And you would see back on our page 23, we have a budget to actual schedule to show you, and you've historically underspent that fund by at least 6% or a couple, $2 million or more. So again, this is a conservative, assuming that you spend that entire budget. And that's another thing we could adjust in a future version of the report. If you put in the wrong.
Put in assumptions that are not trendable, accurate, you're not going to have
And we can adjust that if you would like us to adjust it based. Well, what? Well, if you look at page 23, you can see in some of your funds you very much overspend the budget, and then in the general fund specifically, you've underspent it. So since the general fund can sometimes be a catch-all for other funds that need assistance, but yeah. Right. Well, that's the appropriations that have been approved. But yeah. So that's something we can change if that's what you'd prefer to see. So then if you jump down to the line 55 is your operating balance percentage. So this is telling you how much cash you have on hand as a percent of the operating disbursements. You can see it's very healthy. We typically are telling our clients that they need a minimum of 15%, and most of the time our clients are struggling to get there. So you can see at the end of 2021, it was over 62% operating balance, which is very healthy. And also just to point out, at the end of 2024, assuming all of the conservative assumptions did come to fruition, you'd still be over a 15% operating balance. Do we have any other questions on the general fund?
So again, this is kind of where we want, I know this is the first time you had a chance to look at this and digest all these numbers, but again, one of the big assumptions, as you talked about, is we're assuming that you, in this report here, that you spent 100% of your budget. Typically, that hasn't happened. But we again wanted your feedback to say, okay, is that something that is going to happen this year? Maybe this year is a little unique because of, COVID or other expenses. We already saw that you had some additional, or some encumbrances of almost $1 million from last year. So even though it looked like you spent, not your entire budget, you did have some encumbrances that carried over this year. And then we also know that there's some additional appropriations that you've approved, and I know there's some that's been tabled. So those are the kinds of things that, as we, finalize this report, want feedback from the council to get a more accurate picture of where you think you're going to be at the end.
It's just my opinion, working with actuarial consultants through trust funds, and they always predict conservative, and they're like weathermen, they're wrong about half the time, and yet they keep their job. And so my concern is if we're going to project, let's project on historical values. And I think, you can say, we're saying this is historically what happened, but if you did spend your budget, but here we only see one scenario. That's all I'm saying is, I hate it that we get it on both ends. We see the same thing on healthcare costs. This is what we think is going to happen, but this is what has happened with my experience with actuarials. And so I don't understand why it is whenever we have the actual right here. And I would ask you, when is the last time they spent their whole budget in the county council?
Well, not in any of the historical years that we looked at here.
Yeah.
Yeah, not
Not in the last 30 years, but we
3
think.
years.
How about the last 10?
We didn't look that far.
Probably not. So then if we have an actuarial risk of actually that happen, what is that risk?
If they actually spent the budget, well, that's what you see here.
Yeah.
That's the risk, yeah.
Yeah, but no, what is the percentage risk? Because everything's on risk, right? It's not going to happen. So I just don't think the report has a good value if you don't put actual numbers in. That's just my opinion, that's all.
And we could definitely make that change. This is a draft, and we are here for that feedback, so we could definitely adjust that.
The commissioners asked for it to show that the revenue's been like that, we should do their budget like that, the same approach. That we should budget their revenue or their expenditures just like this same methodology. I don't think anybody in the budget would like it either.
I would caution that if you were to take it to what you actually spend, you'd have to make sure that you did your budgets accordingly. Because if you did a percentage on that because we almost know every year that budget is overinflated. Because there are numbers in there that they never spend. Now, but so if they were to take and use that same principle and say, okay, if you're gonna increase your budget by 4%, but you're not gonna spend 6% of it, that's fine. But if we don't increase it by 4% and they say you're not gonna spend 6%, that may create a problem.
And she put in there a 3% increase in the budget, which is maybe it's not enough, and if they want to adjust that, but if we don't have the actual, I'm just a person that like to see the actual number, then we can be conservative with it. But if we have a number that is already ultra conservative, then we don't have actual numbers. That's all I'm saying is, because we all know how to factor in a 5 or 10% variance, but when you already have a number that is super inflated. And to show the history of it is, you use operating balance percentages, you're going from a 62 that is actual to a projected 15 in 2 years.
I concur with what he said.
Put that down, Brenda and I.
Yes, we agree. Yes, we do. I think the earth tilted a little different. Yep. To the right.
You understand the numbers of it, and it has some value to it, is that, but I think you can be, if you're conservative all the way across, then you end up having a way out of kilt number, that's all.
Yeah, and we can make that change. And then as we go through some of the other funds that maybe are not as consistent, we need similar feedback, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just looking at the overall general one. Yeah, there
Yeah.
are gonna be individual accounts that maybe need to be adjusted, but
All right. Shall we move on to the economic development schedule? Okay, that's page 5. So again, it has the same assumptions built in. So I just want to jump to line 12. You have a large encumbrance of almost 5.2 million this year. So obviously we did not carry that forward. Also on line 25, there was bonds that were outstanding related to this fund that have matured. And then if you jump to line 29, the decrease based on the budget and a 3% growth on that budget for 23 and 24, you can see that you'd be adding to your cash balance for 23 and 24, assuming that you spend your entire budget in the edit fund. So do you have any questions on the edit fund here?
That 78.06%, is that reflected, is that because of these encumbrances? Is that why it's so much slower than?
Yes, yeah, so that's gonna always fluctuate, so if you have your expenditures, your operating disbursements go up, then that's gonna impact that calculation as well. And then you see it jump back up for 23, because we don't assume that you'll continue making those disbursements in the future. Again, just based on the budget though. So if there is any one-time capital projects that potentially would be paid out of here, you have a very healthy balance, we could definitely add those for 23 and 24 as well.
And that's what I mentioned, this is kind of the first step of the process is, so, unless you have some other projects you're aware of, once we get your list of potential capital projects, this is definitely one fund where we could look into, paying for some of this project. But we want to make sure we have the kind of the cash flow as reasonable as we expect going forward. You can see it's growing over time. So if you did have a one-time capital project, this would be one fund that we would maybe recommend that you could pay for that out of this fund rather than having to bond for it.
All right, we'll go on to the lit special purpose fund. So in this fund, you can see on line 10, there is no budgeted operating disbursements. On line 15 has the debt service for the 2019 bonds that were issued to be paid from this fund. And even with that debt service increasing in 23 and 24, on line 20, you can see still adding to that cash balance each year. So another fund where there's cash available as well.
This is one I know, sorry, I know this is one where you put in place just because of the jail project. I know it's kind of limited in what it can be used for, but, so this is a fund that, as you start looking at, your operating costs for the jail and others, this might be one where you can boost things to, that might be in your general fund or other places.
And I was gonna mention, at the very end of this report, we have the fund allowable uses for each of the funds detailed, so you can reference back to all these funds that we're saying that there's maybe some money available. There's detailed use descriptions based on statute for which, what they could be used for, so. All right. Page 7 is lit public safety.
Can
Oh, I'm
I just
sorry,
ask
yes.
one question to your point that you just said, that in this lit fund, you said for operating costs for like the jail, that this would be appropriate usage for it? where I understand with the commissioners, we're struggling with is trying to get, that they know they're gonna have these operating costs. And so if we have it, if you think this is a better usage of this lit fund versus the commissioners, I'm just asking, from your points of view.
I guess we have to review the purposes that they can be used.
Yeah, well, that's what, but he just used that as a reference, is
Yeah.
that not right?
Yeah, I have to look back at the statute. I know it depends upon how the statute was written, if you can use it for operating. I know a lot of we didn't help you with this particular statute, but a lot of times the special purpose can be used for jail, construction, and operating. So I believe that's what this special purpose lit was for as well.
Huh? That's what I thought. I would have to double check, but I was thinking it was for the construction only, not unless there's a change. But the other thing I would caution you, this has a sunset date.
Yeah.
So to put operating expenses in there, annual operating, you could get yourself in a pickle. Granted, it would be,
When we're all gone.
yeah, hopefully we're all gone by then, that's up to somebody, but I don't think that's a problem you want to leave at somebody's doorstep.
But Jason, I agree with Melissa. I thought our special purpose was for basically the construction of the
Just for
bond only.
construction. Yes,
And
actually, we were looking
then
at
we
the
have the
statute
lit
here.
public safety and we have the lit correctional rehab, which you
Right.
could use.
You can use it for both.
Yeah.
The
You could use for both.
correctional rehab, I think you can use for both special purpose.
Yeah,
And I do
special
believe
purpose
that
and-
whatever balance you would have in there at the end of this, your sunset, there's maybe rules for that, but I think it's not until sunset.
Yeah, and those
Yeah,
rules
that's-
are listed on that back page.
Yeah, I apologize. This special purpose can only be used for construction, but your other revenue can be used
Yeah.
for both construction and operating.
Okay, I'll make sure we're all on this.
Special purpose. That's for the jail bond. That's where we pay for that jail, that monstrosity.
But just to clarify the question that we're kind of going to, special purpose would not be a recurring utility bill, for example.
No,
No. Yeah, correct. It's just for construction.
What'd you just ask?
For the bond, it's gonna be just for
I have a quick question. Can that fund be used to acquire a piece of property that we may be looking at for a dispatch center? And then
That's
also, it
interesting.
looks like, per the statute, can we use that to demolish the current existing jail once it's unoccupied?
oh, I think there was something about demolition.
It does.
It looked like it said that we could
It
use it
does.
for demolition, and we could use that also to acquire a new dispatch piece of property if we needed.
Yeah, acquisition of land is listed in here. It says equip a county jail or related buildings and parking facilities, so.
Okay,
I would say probably yes, but I'd want to defer to the attorney on
right,
that.
right.
ASAP.
I was just,
Yeah.
yeah, I'd rather pay the attorney fees and pay that out of that tax to get a piece of property across the street. So, thank you.
Moving on.
So if we jump to page 7, that's your public safety local income tax. This fund historically has not had a budget since it's been put in place. It hasn't spent anything yet. So in 2022, including an encumbrance of $1.5 million, we're still assuming through the end of the year with a little bit over 5.1 million if you spent the entire budget and that encumbered amount as well. And then projecting forward again on based on the budget, still looking pretty flat from year to year.
And the 1.5 million personal services is for,
That's from the budget.
Back those, so many jailers.
To correctional officers.
For the correctional officers. All right.
that was gonna be
And
my
that
guess,
encumbrance
but-
has been paid.
That was my guess, but.
Okay. Page 8 is that correctional and rehabilitation facility local income tax. Again, similar to the other income tax pages. If you just jump down to line 23, you could see we're projecting adding over $3 million a year to that fund balance based on the 2022 budget. So if that budget is maybe low for 2022, with the new jail opening, we'd want to adjust the 2023 budget to be more realistic, if that's the case. But assuming it stays at the 2022 level, you can see we're very healthy cash balance in this fund. All right, so page 9, I believe is our last income tax fund. It's your Public Safety Answering Point, PSAP, income tax. And again, on line 24, you can see we're projecting that you're adding cash to the balance in this fund as well, even assuming that you spend the entire budget out of this fund for 2022, and that 3% growth moving forward. Any question on the income taxes? Okay. The next page is the highway fund. So in our operating receipts, this fund has a wheel tax, excise surtax, and then also your motor vehicle highway distribution as the main revenue sources. And then we assume those, no growth in those moving forward. And then in our operating disbursements, in that top section, for 2022, we're showing what was budgeted. And then also an encumbrance of $137,000. And then we did add, from a capital plan that we received that was issued in March of 2021, a plan for, it looks like some trucks and some equipment for 2022 through 2024. Again, assuming that we approve to add all of those items to the budget. But if that was the case, you could see that we would use a good chunk of the cash balance in 2022, ending the year with a little bit over $466,000, and then going negative in the future years, so.
In,
Yeah.
let me ask you this, how does this tie in with the next page? Do
Right.
we have to net
That's-
those out? We have to net those out?
Well, so the restricted fund has restricted uses, so it would depend on if any of that equipment was related to new construction or reconstruction specifically, could be tied and tracked to one of those projects, then it could be paid out of that fund. So,
But potentially it could be any like personal services, other services. And
yeah,
so-
anything that they could track that would fall under the restricted fund. So you really have to look at these two together, especially when we're projecting forward, because the budget for restricted is just based on what they've historically spent out of that fund, because when they issue their budget, they don't split it up.
Right, I just
between the
wanted to
two.
make sure we were all on track with that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for DLG, if you're right, you combine them, but you have to keep them separate.
Right.
Restricted, you can only use for new projects.
But we
I will
reimburse
say
the fund, don't you?
That when 1173 started, we, like all counties, kind of had some issues there, getting it going. But Larry's kind of, Larry left us.
Yeah, he does.
We kind of got it under control, and so more of that is starting to come out of 1173 to take some of the heat off 1176.
Yeah, and the.
And really, Highway 3 and 1176 is really 1173 restricted, is what we've kind of done.
So as much of your expenses that's related to new construction, I would move that to the restricted
Yeah.
1173 as
He's
much
been
as you can.
trying to do as much as he can.
Yeah.
So, if I look at the restricted fund, those, well, you've got the disbursements there and, so, and they're also in the highway fund.
Yeah, you have disbursements.
But
in
you don't have-
1176 and 1173.
But, so do you reimburse the highway fund? Is that how that works? You pay it out of, or,
Everything's paid out of the highway fund, then we just make an adjustment.
so,
So it
but,
puts it all
but is
back
that
to-
reimbursement's not showing up in the revenues in highway?
No, because we're not doing a reimbursement.
So,
We're doing adjustment at the end of the year, so it's not really looking like a reimbursement.
okay, but are both the expenditure,
Huh?
so if you look, I'd have to look at the budget where they show that they basically have a $3.7 million budget in '21. That's what I go back to without the equipment in there. Does that
So,
include all three?
It might be helpful to point out that
Let me look.
the total budget that's approved on the budget order for the highway, I allocated between the highway fund and the restricted fund.
Okay,
So it's
that's what-
not, so in total, it equals what they got approved. So I just don't know specifically what they're gonna actually be able to pay out of the restricted fund, but in total, it's the one highway budget line item.
Okay.
Yeah. Aside from these capital pieces.
So I guess Larry, and then, as much as we can move of that budget, $4 million budget, as much as we can move to restricted 1173, that's what we'd want to try to do at the end of the year.
Well, I mean, when I'm looking at,
No, they did spend
It's like-
3,706,601 out of 1176. 2021,
out of 1176,
yeah, regular highway. He's well aware of that. This last year, when he got to looking at payroll, there wasn't as much done that could be accounted for, Jason, by 1173. Because there is such restrictions on it.
So let's just for conversation, let's just say that, the most that you can move over to 1173 is that, $1.6 million a year. And what we're showing in 2022 and 2023, those expenses, you can't move any more of those expenses to 1173. What this tells you is that in order to have a balanced budget or a balance at zero at the end of 2023, you're gonna have to move $568,000 of expenses to another fund, to your general fund or, edit. So that's kind of what this is telling you.
Which Larry and I have talked about.
well, I mean, we've
I
known
mean,
for a
not
while.
506, but that eventually there's gonna be,
That's-
if the state doesn't do something.
Yeah, I know we've worked with the county, the AIC, we've worked with them in trying to adjust that where you don't have to move so much to the restricted and keep more in your unrestricted. but so
Because
far they
mind you,
haven't.
there's some small counties that are struggling, that are having to deal with this, so hopefully they may even go to what I've heard, Larry even heard, they may, instead of 50-50, it may go 70-30 at least.
Yeah, we've heard different percentages. It's harder for counties to stay within that restricted budget.
It is.
I don't know if this is necessarily the place to interject all this, maybe it should have been earlier on. Is anywhere, does this reflect in the 9% inflation where we are right now?
No, right now, we're just assuming the 3% across the board and cost, increased cost.
Okay. Is that not something we need to consider also?
Well, that's
I
something
mean,
that
is
we can,
3%
we talk
is
about that
ex-
sensitivity analysis if we wanted to, and I wouldn't say it's probably 9% across every line item. But yeah, there might be some areas that we wanna adjust more than others.
3% is probably way too conservative a calculation, considering where we are and where we're going economically.
The other question I have, or the other question we have, is I don't see anything that takes into consideration the income coming in from the new casino. So if they stay on time schedule, that'd be 18 months, so that's not figured into the 2024 look, which is lots of
Like assessed
millions of
value?
dollars.
Well,
For
with the
gambling tax?
gambling.
Oh,
I've heard a lot of estimates on, no, to answer your question, no, we have not included that.
Right.
And I would, to make your point about being extra conservative, I'd hate to count on that before you receive it.
Yeah.
There's also a delay, time, it's collected and returned, but no, to answer your question, no, we haven't included that,
Okay.
that revenue.
Yeah.
Well, but what fund would that go into? Do we know?
Probably would go to your gaming revenue.
But yeah, so I mean, we've not, that's
It's not
not
even
any
a line
of these,
item.
that's not any of these funds that you
Right.
talked about.
No, we haven't.
But, and, part of it is because there hasn't been much activity, but that's one that we could, definitely look at if you want to. But right now, they're just estimates, as far as what revenue you're going to receive.
And I just wondered, how do you do it when you do that reappropriation that you talked about instead of showing it revenue? How do you factor that in conservative? How do you do what's the conservative mode when you reappropriate money that you knock it down by 10%?
What do you mean reappropriate money?
When he said that we don't show that back in revenue on the 1173 to 1176
Oh, you mean when you make an adjustment?
adjustment. It's actual numbers.
So
To my
these,
point.
these expenses have been reduced by what you shifted to 1173?
Yes, if you combine both funds together, then you're gonna get the total budget. Yes. Yeah.
Because if
You
you,
kind of really have to look at them combined.
so like if you look at the 532, 2021, they expended 1,200,000, basically 1,230,000. And in here, 2021, the whole, oh shoot, I'm on the wrong, I flipped my pages. And in the restricted, 2021, you got 1,627, and here, we spent 1,229, so was that after the adjustment, right? Because you had a $2.8 million budget. Yes, okay. Yes.
All right. Want to jump to the local road and street fund on page 12? This fund, on line 14, we're estimating that the total operating disbursements will be a little bit over $1.1 million for 2022. And on line 21, ending the year around $800,000, utilizing a little bit of the cash balance if you expend the entirety of the budget in this fund, which does change from year to year. And then projecting at the end of 2024 to still have a very healthy operating balance of almost 50%, assuming you continue to spend 100% of your budget. All right. Page 13 is the reassessment fund. This is another fund that's a part of your maximum levy. So on lines 2 through 7, our operating receipts are all tied to that property tax levy in line 2. And again, we just assume that you maintain the same allocation percentage that you did for 22 moving forward. And then line 17, total operating disbursements, again, assuming the entire budget. Line 19, increase and decrease, maintaining relatively flat. And on line 24, a very healthy operating balance of over 100%. So if there is another property tax fund where we see that may need additional revenue, you could decrease the levy in this fund for 23 or 24, and utilize some of that cash balance.
This is another one where, look on page 23, historically you have to spend 100%, you only spend about 90% of your budget. So that's one where we can, do more like 90% or maybe 95%. But as Caitlin said, your ending balance, you have more in there to pay for entire year's budget. Your ending balance is $1.3 million. You spend about less than $1 million out of that. So as Caitlin said, this is one fund. If you needed to move more levy to your general fund, let's say going next year or in a couple of years, you could reduce this levy in your reassessment and then move more levy to your general fund or another fund where you might have some more pressure. You probably really don't need $1.3 million balance in reassessment unless I know some counties over time they buy election equipment, they pay for it out of this fund. So they want this to build up and then pay for that large piece of equipment out of this. That's something
Can pay for election equipment out of reassessment?
Don't get too excited. I know the assessor needs new software, but he was afraid to even ask this year, although I tried to talk him to it. So it's more compatible with our tax software, but I think that's the plan for next year.
So if that's the case, that's something we probably want to put in here for 2024. So you can kind of see that, you might have a $1.3 million balance now, but after that large expense, it might go down to something that's reasonable. So that's, if he has an idea what that might cost, we could put that in here.
I think he did put, I didn't read it thoroughly yet, but he did put that in the three-year plan. He did provide a three-year plan. See?
Yeah,
Should've-
it's huge, right?
I told him same thing, put it in there.
If any other department heads are out here watching, that's why we need a 3 to 5 year plan.
All right. Page 14 is your health fund, another property tax fund. And if we just jump down to line 35, again, assuming that you spend your entire budget, we will utilize some of the cash balance for 2022, but still a very healthy operating balance of over 44% at the end of 2024. Any questions on the health fund? All right. Page 15 is your Parks and Recreation Fund. This is another fund where we did receive some information on, from their capital plan and some of their prioritization for those projects. So you could see starting on line 18, that information included. And assuming that you would choose to fund all of the projects in their capital plan in this time period, you would see that we'd utilize some of the cash balance for 2022 and then ending negative in 2024. So again, this is a property tax levy fund, so this could be an option if you did want to fund all of those projects where you can move some from reassessment to this fund to help cover some of that. All right. Page 16 is your 911 fund. On line 11, capital outlays for 2022, you can see that is higher than historical. That is for equipment for new radios for the 911 service. So we did not assume that moving forward. And you can see on line 16 that we estimate adding almost $500,000 to the cash balance each year, assuming operating disbursements don't increase. All right. Moving on to cumulative bridge, another property tax fund. And on line 19, the total operating disbursements for 2022 are estimated to be 1.8 million. And that would utilize about $670,000 of your cash balance if you were to spend the entire budget. This fund has historically actually overspent its budget. So again, that schedule's on page 23, if you want to look at the year to year. So assuming that they did spend their entire budget, and we didn't allocate additional property taxes to this fund, we would end up negative at the end of 2024.
That would have to be reestablished.
It is a rate-driven fund within your maximum levy, so it still takes a portion of that maximum levy. But I do believe if you wanted to change the rate and allocate more to that maximum levy, you would have to reestablish the
Yeah,
rate,
I was
just
gonna
like
say
CCD.
Yeah, I was gonna say we'd have to reestablish it.
Okay, and then your CUME Capital Development Fund is page 18. We assume that levy remains constant, as that's a rate-driven fund. And we are assuming if you spent the entire budget, as well as the encumbrance there of $247,000, you utilize some of the cash balance, ending this year with about $260,000. However, if you look over at 2024, we assume still a very healthy balance at the end of 24 of about $308,000.
Now,
Yeah.
this one, that bond, capital out, was paid off. I don't say it was paid off this year. Well, that's what I'm looking at, if there's another way we can adjust that, but.
Is it the 490?
That's the bond payment. Yeah, you can continue to use
If
it
this
for
is-
capital projects.
Could be something they could use then for these other building projects that they want. So have not yet put anything in, kind of
No,
waiting for some
That's something I
guidance.
want to talk, because David and I had talked about that
Yeah,
before, we were talking about budget stuff.
because I spoke with DLGF about it too, so, yeah. It is used for those projects that you're looking at.
That's part of the creative.
Yeah.
All right, and our last fund is the rainy day fund. It's showing a $480,000 expenditure in 2022, which I know is budgeted just as a placeholder each year, so we did not carry that forward. So currently ended 2021 with almost $1 million. And then the following few schedules are your, a few of your outstanding pieces of debt, just for reference, are the next 3 pages. And then page 23, as I mentioned, is that budget to actual report, looking at each fund, how they typically match up to what was budgeted for that year for reference. And then 24 and 25 are those detailed fund descriptions and uses for each of the funds that we talked about.
On
Yeah.
that page 23, when you have a budget that we do, and then during the course of the year, we have appropriations for different departments, then those are baked into this to show that they are part of the budget or part of the expenditure, or how do you, the actual budget, how do you show that? If
Yeah.
So a department comes to us and say it's highway, and they ask for additional money for gasoline, and then so we had budgeted X dollars and then we appropriated Y. Is this number a Z?
So no, this number is what was originally budgeted during the budget process.
Uh-huh.
And then the expenditures, though, would reflect
Okay.
what they actually spent.
So when
if you did approve,
percentage of budget expended, that's after all allocation or appropriations are added in. In 19, you show they're at 117.5% of budget, and then you show 95.6, and then 99.2, with all appropriations.
yeah, these are all the actual expenditures.
Yeah, great. Thank you.
All right. Do you have any other questions or overall feedback that you'd like to see incorporated?
Copies?
Yeah.
So again, we kind of want this to be a tool, like I took a couple of notes, things that you might want to change. One was the general fund maybe showing not spending 100%, but maybe, 95%. Kind of being more realistic of. Yeah, but you have to kind of look at it fund by fund, because if you look at like highway, local road and street, we spend over 100%. So I would kind of look at more fund by fund. And of course, like highway, local road, street, bridge, a lot of those funds are kind of like big capital projects. A lot of times you'll build up money over time, then do a big bridge or a large road. So those I'm not concerned about spending more than what you brought in, because that's kind of typically how those funds are for capital. It's the more the
Edit's one of
operating
them.
that, like the general fund, you want to assume that you only spend 90% or 95%. We can make that change. Because our goal is that, as you're working on your budget right now, you kind of look at the top part of each schedule. Okay, this is the amount of revenue we're collecting each year. Do we want to have a balanced budget? If so, we don't want our budget to be more than what we think we're going to bring. You guys have, in most of your funds, you have healthy balances where if you do spend more than what you're bringing in, you have enough to handle that for a number of years. But it's something that, you want to monitor, because eventually you're going to run out of your cash balance. So that's like, if you're thinking about, giving let's say, a 3% raise, that's something your funds could probably definitely handle it for this year, and maybe in year 2, in year 3. So if we start getting on year 4 and year 5, that's when you start thinking, okay, maybe we can handle it. That's where, we can run that sensitivity. Okay, what does it look like with a 3% raise or a 5% raise? Or you mentioned inflation, and we can look at that.
Jason, maybe to address like spending your operating balance down, maybe a good way to go about that would be to look at what your normal operating expenditures are, and maybe use your operating balance for capital expenditures if you have, because they're more one time. Because otherwise, if you're using your operating balance to cover annual operating expenses, then eventually, it's not sustainable.
Right, yeah, and like I said, we want to first get a good handle on your cash flow for the next couple of years, because what we don't want to do is say, okay, just looking at your general fund, you have a very healthy balance, even before going down to 15%, but even this year, say we keep it at 40%, you may want to, a nice goal is to have a 50% ending balance, because that means you have enough money in the bank to
Last
cover
year,
6 months.
Yep.
If for some reason settlement gets delayed, for whatever reason, which has happened before, it'd be nice to know that you have money in the bank to cover your expenses for 6 months if your settlement doesn't come in for a month or so. So that's something that, we're gonna work with you and the commissioners, but once we get those capital projects, we're gonna look at your ending balance, and we're gonna make sure that we don't dip into balance where you don't feel comfortable, that you can't cover your operating costs if something were to happen.
Perfect.
Again, we want this to be, your tool, the commissioner's tool, so we want, suggestions, recommendations to help be more useful for you as you're going through the budget process. And also, to answer your question about additional appropriation, when we have clients that, when we do a final report, which I say final, it's kind of always updating and give more information. But, if someone comes in and asks for additional appropriation, in September, October, we want you to pull out this report and say, okay, if we spend all of our budget or 95% of our budget, we're going to end the year at this. And you're asking us for a $200,000 additional appropriation. If we grant that to you, now our end of year balance is going to be Y. And not only are it going to be Y into 2022, but it's going to be Z into 2023, and double Z into 2024. And can we afford that? Not just today, can we afford it 2 years?
The only thing I want to go back to is the 3%, I think, is probably a little too conservative given the times that we're in right now. With 9% inflation, 3% doesn't give enough of a buffer, I don't believe, for what we were coming into.
I guess to kind of get some guidance from you, since you're going through your budget right now, you want us to wait to kind of update this until you kind of have a preliminary approved budget, and we can kind of put that into this report, and then take the 5% off that number? That'd be helpful.
How influential are you on the part of where we're going to get the employee compensation package in so that we can factor that in? Because that's going to be a huge,
I'll ask Jada about that.
thank you. Because that's like the elephant that's consuming all the
Yeah, I
oxygen
can-
in the room. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll ask her about that. Yeah, I understand that, the key part, that's a significant part of your budget, so
Very
that's gonna
much
probably
so.
drive a lot of other,
Yes.
other decisions.
And the sooner we can get that, the sooner we can go forward with what you're asking us, because thank you very much for your presentation. I really appreciate it all.
Welcome.
Very informative.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment?
Yes.
Sorry, Commissioner.
Thank you for 5 of you having the attention to review the budget. It's nice. And the other minor problem is your additional appropriations in reference to fuel costs, and be considering if you would, how you'd like to fund that, or if you want to fund it, because we're going to come up with having to curtail services if you don't fund it. My preference would be that seems like you're financially pretty sound, even for rare type of thing happening here, and I would like for you to consider funding it. Where you fund it from, I don't care.
Right?
Well, I had an idea, and Larry's not really too keen on it, but because he wants to use that edit money that we appropriated for community crossings in the commissioner's budget for fuel. You guys made that. There's $1 million allocated there in edit in the commissioner's budget.
If that is brought
I'm
to
just
the-
saying to make it this simple.
If a claim is brought to the auditor out of that, it won't be,
No.
accepted. Just saying, I'm sorry.
Well, you
I
have
did
to
put that
act on it.
record.
You have to act on it to get it from somewhere.
In the June meeting, Commissioner Schweitzer was here and he talked about, I think it was the Sunshine meeting maybe. And he also said the commissioners would be working on a plan to maybe conserve fuel. I'm not sure where you guys are at with that.
We talked about it today, and he has 26 take-home vehicles in the county. We've allocated for all those. The engineers has some maintenance people, and I think he's going to leave 3 or 4 trucks at the facilities instead of take them home. Part of the compensation package for the others has been to include a vehicle and gasoline. So,
Do you mean all throughout the county?
yeah.
But was that only supposed to be to drive back and forth to work? It's to commute back and forth to work?
Well,
and
that's
then-
all it's ever been. Has it been anything other than commute?
Well, it's not supposed to be, but
Well, I understand that. I mean, this is always the question with monitoring it. I would say that I was advised that the Volvo trucks that we have are as much as a mile a gallon more fuel efficient than some other trucks with different types of specs on them. So, and I think, so, any rate,
I still
but
say
you're going to have
they-
additional
I still
appropriations, which
say
you can
that
handle it that way.
Depending on their job, they get so many gallons a week, and that's it. Anything else above and beyond? I mean, you could probably come up with probably a building inspector drives how many, whatever, miles an average a week, and they get that many gallons, and anything above that.
We can put in those kinds of guidelines.
I mean, that's my only, would be my suggestion, but, Commissioner.
Good suggestion. You put it on gallons or put it on miles? Okay, all right.